Let's head over to the small, quiet town of Malang in North Cotabato, Philippines. It's a place known for its calm vibe and rural charm, where life moves at a slower pace. The people here are deeply connected to the land, relying on agriculture for their livelihood. In this peaceful town lived the Magwad family. Unlike many others, they led a pretty stable life. Cruz Magwad, the father, was an elementary school teacher who was well respected and loved by everyone, often being praised for his hard work. His wife, Lovella, was the principal at the same school. Together, while they didn't make a lot of money, they were considered one of the more privileged families in town. Their youngest child, Criziol Lewis, was 16 years old. He dreamed of becoming a lawyer even at such a young age and was determined to work hard to achieve that goal. Besides being intelligent, he was also creative, playing guitar, drawing, and reading in his spare time. His older sister, Criziol Gwyn, was the more intense one, super smart, driven, and goal-oriented. She had always been that way as a kid, being a Girl Scout with a sash covered in so many badges that there was no room for more. Gwyn didn't stop there. She enrolled in a pre-med program during high school and planned to become a doctor. By all accounts, Gwyn was the type of person who would sit with you at a party if you were feeling shy, sticking by your side until you felt at ease. That's how she met 17-year-old Janice Sibiel. However, unlike Gwyn and Lewis, Janice's childhood was far from happy. She wasn't privileged enough to attend school and had to work from a very young age. Even worse, she grew up without parents. Her first real memories began around the age of 8. Before that, everything was a blur. She only recalls being found by a stranger wandering alone on a huge shipping container boat. Her parents were nowhere to be found, and Janice believed they had abandoned her. A stranger was kind enough to post her picture and name online in an attempt to find her parents. They shared her story on Facebook and various online forums, but no one ever came forward. Eventually, Janice was dropped off at the Philippine version of Child Protective Services, the Department of Social Welfare and Development, where she moved from one foster home to another. Not long after, Janice was offered a live-in nanny job by a family. Though she hated the job, she was incredibly grateful for the opportunity. Janice shared all of this with Gwyn, and Gwyn was so deeply moved by her story that an idea began to form in her mind, an idea that could give Janice the safe, loving home she deserved: adoption. Together with Lewis, Gwyn decided to present this idea to their parents. Like a well-thought-out thesis, they approached the subject with serious dedication, explaining that adopting Janice wouldn't just change her life, it would help their family too. They convinced their parents that Janice could pitch in with the chores around the house, which was a significant consideration in their Asian family culture. It wasn't uncommon for children to share the responsibility of washing dishes, cleaning, and cooking. With one more set of hands to help, the family would run more smoothly. Gwyn's parents weren't exactly rolling in money, but they believed in teaching responsibility. The kids had chores, had to keep their grades up, and attended church every Sunday. They were strict, but it was out of love. Gwyn and Lewis respected that. In 2021, Janice moved in, and it was like she was instantly part of the family. The Magwad welcomed her with open arms. Lewis even gave up his own room so Janice could have a more comfortable one. They enrolled her in school right away, and for the first time, Janice didn't have to wake up with the constant worry of finding food or going to work. She was finally allowed to be a kid. As Janice settled into her new life, the bond between the three siblings grew stronger by the day. We could see the happiness shining through, especially in the videos they posted on TikTok. Janice even got to experience a family vacation for the first time, something she had always dreamed of. Laughter filled the air as they explored new places together, creating memories she would cherish forever. For once, Janice felt like she belonged to something bigger, something safe and full of love. But just when everything seemed perfect, Janice's world was about to shatter. On December 10th of that same year, she posted a series of statuses on Facebook claiming that she and her siblings were under attack. It was just days before Christmas, a time that should have been filled with joy. Instead, it marked the beginning of a nightmare. At that time, Mr. Cruz, their father, was at school doing some chores related to the upcoming holiday, while Lovella, their mother, was away on a work trip. Everything changed when Mr. Cruz received a phone call that left him frozen in terror. The voice on the other end told him that their home was being ransacked, and his children were inside. By 3:15 in the afternoon, Cruz finally arrived at the house. It was eerily silent outside the front door. His eyes locked onto a blood-soaked blanket on the ground with a knife nearby. He called out for his kids, but there was no response. He moved quickly to the back door and managed to find a way inside. Cruz moved rapidly through the house, his voice echoing off the walls as he searched for his children. When he entered the living room, that a horrifying sight met his eyes. There, lying on the floor, was his daughter Gwen. A towel soaked in blood was wrapped around her body, her limbs and torso were covered in multiple slash wounds. But it was the injuries on her neck that were particularly severe. Crime scene photos later revealed the gruesome extent of the wounds. Her flesh was torn apart, and ants had already begun to gather on her body. Not far from Gwen, near the main door, Cruz found Louis. His hands and feet were bound, and a gag covered his mouth. His body was riddled with fresh stab wounds, and the amount of blood suggested that the attack had happened just moments before Cruz arrived. But there was one more person missing. Janice's heart pounded as Cruz continued to search the house, calling her name. Finally, Janice appeared. She emerged from her room, her hair wet and her face pale and shaken. She was in shock, barely able to speak. Seeing her, Cruz immediately called the police. The officers arrived soon after, stepping into a crime scene that would later be described as one of the most gruesome in the Philippines. Blood pooled on the floor, and the house bore the marks of extreme violence. Janice, while trembling, told the officers that they had been attacked. The house was in disarray, cabinets had been pried open and personal belongings were scattered across the rooms. At first glance, it seemed like a robbery. However, investigators knew that appearances could be deceiving. They needed to confirm whether anything valuable had been taken to solidify the robbery theory. At the same time, as part of their protocol, the police did not rule out the parents as persons of interest. The police needed to confirm their alibis and whereabouts during the attack. The investigators turned their attention to the room where Janice said she was hiding during the attack. It was messy, but that wasn't unusual for a robbery scene. What stood out, though, were the details that didn't add up. The disarray in the room, though chaotic, didn't have the usual signs of a real robbery. So the police began to search the house more carefully, and they soon found some crucial evidence just outside the front door. The police discovered a blood-stained shirt, which they believed had been dropped by the attacker while trying to escape. About 100 meters away, they found a plastic bag in a ditch. Inside were bloody pants and underwear. It seemed the attacker had deliberately discarded these items to hide evidence. Inside the house, the scene became increasingly horrifying. The living room floor was littered with shards of glass and broken bottles, a clear sign of the violence that had unfolded there. Expansive pools of blood reveal the brutal nature of the attack. Among the carnage, investigators discovered a discarded knife, a baseball bat, and a hammer, each stained with blood. These weapons were assumed to have been used in the murders. Crime scene analysts took careful note of the blood patterns, which provided key insights into the sequence of events. They determined that Gwen, the older sibling, had likely been killed first. Her blood had partially coagulated and rigor mortis had already begun to set in. In contrast, Louis's blood appeared much fresher, suggesting he had been murdered after Gwen. The different states of the blood and bodies made this theory even more plausible. Louis's hands and feet were bound, while Gwen's were not. This discrepancy indicated that Gwen might have been ambushed and killed quickly, while Louis was restrained, likely to prevent him from resisting before his own murder. The fact that so many different tools were used and that the victims had distinctive types of wounds strongly suggested the involvement of more than one attacker. This theory was supported by the fact that Louis had been restrained. It would have been difficult for a single person to control a victim while also carrying out such a brutal attack. Adding to the mystery, Cruz confirmed that the weapons found at the scene were his. The murderers seemed to have used tools that were readily available in the house, which made the crime even more unsettling. As investigators continued to gather evidence, they found something that stood out. The family's laundry machine had been used, but there were no freshly washed clothes anywhere in the house. This odd discovery suggested that something unusual had happened after the crime, perhaps an attempt to erase evidence or cover their tracks. The extreme brutality of the crime prompted local authorities to launch a manhunt for the suspects. The public was shocked, and the need for justice became urgent. To help with the investigation, the vice of the Municipal Council of Mlang, North Cotabato announced a reward of 200,000 pesos for any information leading to the capture of the perpetrators. The mayor also offered an additional 50,000 pesos as a bounty. These actions emphasized the gravity of the case and the community's desperate need for answers. Autopsies were performed on Gwyn and Lewis over 2 days, starting on December 13, 2021, and the results were chilling. Gwyn had sustained 32 stab and slash wounds, some of which were deep enough to almost sever her limbs. One of her ears had been cut off, and her neck and upper arm were nearly severed. Her body also showed signs of blunt force trauma, likely caused by the hammer and baseball bat found at the scene. Additionally, the backs of her hands were bruised, covered in defensive wounds, indicating that she had fought fiercely. Meanwhile, Lewis had endured 51 knife wounds, some so deep that they exposed his bones and internal organs. Red marks on his neck suggested he may have been strangled. Unlike his sister, Lewis had no defensive wounds. He also had signs of blunt force trauma on his limbs and torso. All these injuries were consistent with the weapons recovered at the scene. Investigators quickly ruled out the possibility of a robbery gone wrong. Though the rooms appeared ransacked, only Gwyn's phone was missing. Nothing else of value had been taken, leading authorities to believe that the killer or killers were familiar with the victims. It was also striking that the crime took place in broad daylight, which made the entire situation even more unsettling. Before the autopsy results were made public, rumors began circulating online accusing Janice of being involved in the crime. These rumors gained traction due to her survival, the weapons being from the family home, and the locked front door. The accusations grew increasingly intense, with some even threatening Janice. Under the mounting pressure, the police decided to question her. Janice described the events of that day. She had been studying with Gwyn in her bedroom while Lewis was downstairs in the living room. Suddenly, they heard screams, and 3 men broke into the house. The 2 girls rushed downstairs and saw the 3 men attacking Lewis with the weapons found at the scene. The attackers then turned on Gwyn. In fear, Janice fled upstairs, locked herself in her bedroom, and hid under the bed. Janice was too scared to call the police, so instead, she texted the family group chat asking for help. Later, she messaged her adoptive mom saying, "Mom, help." When no one saw those messages, Janice went a step further and posted on social media, saying, "Help. Somebody has broken into the house. I don't want to die. I'm hiding in my room. Help." After a few minutes, she deleted the post, worried the attackers might see it and come after her. By the time someone saw the post and reached out to her mom, Janice was too scared to pick up. She even changed her social media username and put her phone on silent, clearly trying to hide. When the house finally fell silent, Janice emerged from her hiding place, too afraid to go downstairs. She claimed she took a shower and changed clothes to calm herself, finishing just as crews arrived home. However, there was something odd about this part of the story. Janice had told the police she locked herself in her bedroom the moment the attack began, so why did her room look like it had been ransacked? That raised serious questions. More importantly, Janice's version of events was directly at odds with the forensic evidence. The autopsy results and the way the injuries were distributed made it clear that Gwyn was the first victim, not Lewis. This major discrepancy between Janice's account and the evidence made investigators even more suspicious. Something wasn't adding up, and they started to take a closer look at Janice's statements. At first, she told the police her phone was off during the attack, but crews remembered calling her phone and hearing it ring with no answer. When Janice was confronted with this, she changed her story again, now claiming that she had been in the shower and hadn't heard her phone ringing. This was starting to sound suspicious. But that wasn't the only thing that raised eyebrows. Crews also revealed some information about the murder weapons that added fuel to the fire. The baseball bat used in the attack originally belonged to Lewis. He had kept it in his room on the top bunk as a kind of protection. However, after being adopted by Crews, Janice had taken over the top bunk. The hammer used in the attack was another tool that Crews kept around for home repairs. He was very careful about where he stored it, usually hiding it behind the washing machine. Crews mentioned that only 3 people knew exactly where that hammer was: himself, Gwyn, and Janice. This meant that the killer or killers had to have known the family's routines and possessions very well, almost as if they had been living in the house with them. Things became even more suspicious when a delivery driver came forward. The driver had arrived at the house just 18 minutes before Crews was contacted by a neighbor who noticed that no one had answered the door. The driver kept calling out, hoping someone would respond. Eventually, he noticed a woman peering at him through a door before she suddenly walked away. The woman's identity was never confirmed, but it raised serious doubts about where Janice was and what she was doing during the attack. At the crime scene, it had been locked from the inside, and there were no signs of forced entry. This was significant because it meant that whoever had done this was likely someone familiar with the house, someone who had access to a key and could lock the door after the crime. At this point, it was pretty clear that Janice had something to do with the murders. However, since Janice was only 17 years old, still a minor. Under Philippine law, the police couldn't arrest her without solid proof. This legal issue made them tread carefully, as they couldn't move forward with an arrest until they had more definitive evidence. Rather than arresting her immediately, the authorities placed Janice under the care of the Social Welfare Department while they investigated who had actually committed the murders. If Janice's claim about other people being involved was true, the police had a considerable amount of work ahead of them. 5 days after the murders, a significant breakthrough occurred. The police discovered Janice's fingerprints on the murder weapons. This was a huge deal, but it wasn't the smoking gun. After all, Janice had lived in the house where the weapons were stored, so her prints could have been there simply from handling them. Still, it was a lead they couldn't ignore. To ensure she wasn't treated unfairly, Janice was given a lawyer by the Social Welfare Department. However, things took another unexpected turn when Lovella, Janice's adoptive mother, found a contact tracing form while searching Janice's room for clues. To her surprise, it wasn't Janice's form. It belonged to a 17-year-old boy named Esmeraldo Aldo Cano Jr. Aldo was a sacristan at a local church, and Janice had known him from the orphanage. This discovery sent the police scrambling to determine if Aldo had anything to do with the murders. Soon enough, witnesses came forward confirming that Aldo had been near the crime scene on the day of the killings. One woman stated she saw Aldo drop Janice off near the house right before the murders, and another neighbor said she saw him asking for directions to the house that morning. When shown a picture of Aldo, the woman immediately recognized him. Then, on December 16th, 6 days after the murder, Janice, with her lawyer present, gave a full confession. She admitted to being involved in the murders along with Aldo. Janice explained that her motive stemmed from deep resentment and jealousy. She felt that Gwyn and Lewis were receiving all the love and attention from their parents. In her mind, they were standing in the way of her getting the affection she had longed for. She even confessed that killing them would leave her as the only child in the family, guaranteeing that she would get all the love and attention she had recently started receiving after being adopted. Janice revealed that her ultimate goal was to take Gwyn's place in the family, driven by years of emotional neglect in the orphanage where she had grown up. By December 18th, Janice's confession was officially recorded, although it was inconsistent, much like many of her previous statements. The police tracked down Aldo, who voluntarily surrendered, admitting his role as well. Forensic analysis later confirmed that blood found on discarded clothing in a ditch belonged to Aldo. Like Janice, Aldo was also a minor, so he was placed under the care of the Social Welfare Department. Later that same day, in an unrelated banned substance raid, police arrested a 17-year-old for possession of illegal substances. When they searched his phone, they found something that tied him to the case: Gwyn's stolen cell phone. The serial number confirmed it had been taken after the murders. The police pieced it together. Janice had enlisted Aldo to sell the phone because she couldn't get rid of it herself. Unfortunately, the phone had been damaged, making it impossible to retrieve any useful data. The boy who had the phone wasn't involved in the murders, he had simply bought it from Aldo. Because Janice and Aldo were minors, the police couldn't release any juicy details about their confessions to the public, despite the parents pressing for information. As the investigation progressed, Janice stopped cooperating, making it even harder to figure out exactly what had happened. Some people believe Janice's confessions weren't even the full story. Whispers circulated that the murders were even worse than she had let on, like the possibility that Louis was tied up and forced to watch as his sister was murdered before he was killed as well. After the shocking confessions, Lovella, the siblings' mother, was interviewed and reflected on the warning signs she had missed. According to Lovella, they had adopted Janice 5 months before the murders. At first, everything seemed fine, the family welcomed her, and she appeared grateful. However, soon small red flags began to show. In August 2021, when Gwyn's parents were hospitalized, Cruz noticed that 10,000 pesos, about $170, set aside for emergencies was missing. Janice claimed thieves had taken it, but the next day a large sum was found hidden in her school bag. After some questioning, Janice admitted she had taken the money. Despite this breach of trust, the family, particularly Gwyn, chose to forgive her. They were sympathetic to her troubled past, attributing the theft to the survival instinct she had developed after years of hardship. Janice apologized, and the family, hoping this was a one-time mistake. They accepted her apology, believing the worst was behind them. However, as months passed, Janice's behavior started to shift in unsettling ways. She became lazy, irresponsible, neglecting household chores and showing a disregard for reminders. She apologized but never followed through. Although troubling, it didn't raise any immediate alarms until the morning of the murders. On that day, Janice did something she had never done before. She called Cruz and Lovella mom and dad for the first time. It was a small gesture, but it felt like a red flag, indicating a deeper, darker shift in her emotional state. It was as if something had clicked in her mind, setting in motion what was about to happen. As the investigation unfolded, more shocking truths came to light. Janice had lied about her origins from the start. Her story of being an orphan was a fabrication. Her parents were alive and had spent years desperately searching for her. When the case went viral, Filipino amateur sleuths dug into her past and uncovered a nearly decade-old missing persons notice. Her parents weren't very active on Facebook back then, so they missed the post. Fast forward to the murders, and that same post started circulating online again. It didn't take long for Janice's biological parents to recognize her. Born in 2005, Janice was the youngest of 3 children, but her childhood was filled with chaos. Her father's gambling addiction tore the family apart, and after remarrying, her mother tried to make the best of the situation by dividing what little they had left among her children. Eventually, Janice and her siblings were placed in different orphanages. By 2020, Janice had actually reunited with her biological family, but that reunion didn't last long. Her relatives later claimed she cut them off, saying they were too poor to be of any use to her. This betrayal shocked everyone. Things took a darker turn when Janice's biological mother, devastated by what her daughter had done, attended the funeral of Gwyn and Louis. In her grief, she kept apologizing, overwhelmed with guilt about her daughter's actions. In one heartbreaking moment, Janice's biological mother even knelt down, but the Magwad weren't seeking revenge. They made it clear that they weren't angry, only seeking justice. They insisted that Janice's biological mother encourage her daughter to confess. Janice's mother tried to visit Janice at the social welfare office, but Janice refused to see her, citing strict rules. Then, the investigation took a jaw-dropping turn when evidence surfaced suggesting the murders were premeditated. Screenshots of a conversation between Janice and an unknown person went viral. In the messages, Janice confessed that she wanted to kill her siblings, thinking their deaths would give her the freedom she craved. She even wondered if anyone would still accept her if she committed murder, expressing a chilling belief that no matter what she did, God would forgive her if she asked. Some sources claim that Janice often talked about the 2009 horror movie The Orphan, a film about a young girl adopted by a family who ultimately betrays and kills them. She even posted on Facebook that she loved the movie and watched it repeatedly. When Janice's trial began, her behavior was just as disturbing. She was seen smiling and laughing in court, showing no remorse or regret. Cruz and Lovella, devastated by the loss of their children, said in interviews that they might have forgiven Janice if she had shown even a hint of genuine remorse, but her coldness only deepened their pain. The case became a national sensation in the Philippines. From March 2022, when Janice and Esmeralda were officially charged with murder, to their conviction on May 17, 2022, the case was closely followed by the public. Janice Sibiel was sentenced to 31 years in prison, while Esmeralda Aldo Cano Jr. received a 29-year sentence. However, both sentences came with one condition: they would serve them under the supervision of the Department of Social Welfare and Development until their 21st birthdays, after which they would be transferred to adult prisons. Gwyn and Lewis's parents had mixed feelings about the trial's outcome. While they recognized that the courts handed down the toughest punishment possible under the law, they felt the laws were too soft. The biggest issue, however, was Janice's complete lack of remorse. Cruz and Lovella were outspoken against Republic Act 9344, which limits the legal accountability of minors. According to this law, the minimum age for criminal liability is 15, and individuals between the ages of 15 and 18 can be held accountable but are sent to youth centers or rehab programs instead of adult prisons. This law prevents minors like Janice from being tried as adults, even for heinous crimes. Many argued that kids shouldn't be capable of planning or committing such brutal acts. In the US and other countries, minors committing these kinds of crimes would have been tried as adults. Cruz and Lovella felt strongly that Janice's age shouldn't excuse her from taking full responsibility, especially for such a violent and premeditated crime. This view was shared by many who felt the law was too lenient in cases like this. They publicly called for changes to the law, wanting those who commit violent acts at a young age to be held fully accountable. Some of the most heartbreaking facts to come out of the investigation revealed that Gwyn almost escaped. She had the chance to run, but when she heard Lewis calling for help, she went back, hoping to save her brother. The story of Meredith Lynn Sullivan Chapman, 33, captured national attention and was one of the most talked about cases of 2018. Born on January 31, 1985, in Newark, Delaware. Meredith was the youngest of 3 children in the Sullivan family. She was raised in a loving environment, supported by her older brother, Thomas, and sister, Jessica, cherished her. The Sullivan family was financially stable, and her parents ensured that their children received an excellent education while also encouraging them to pursue their personal interests and talents. However, everything changed for Meredith when she was in middle school, as her parents decided to divorce. Fortunately, the separation was friendly, with no significant arguments or legal battles, and both parents continued to be actively involved in their children's lives. Although Meredith found the divorce emotionally challenging, she always felt cared for and loved. Meredith was a kind, outgoing person who easily made friends. Her cheerful and engaging personality made her popular among her peers. From a young age, she excelled in school. Learning came easily to her. She was curious, quick to grasp new concepts, and always willing to take the lead. In addition to her academic success, she had a strong passion for painting and was also very active in sports. During high school, she focused on cheerleading, eventually became the team captain. Even as a teenager, Meredith displayed determination and confidence, working hard to achieve her goals. Despite her drive, she treated others with fairness and respect, earning the admiration of both her classmates and teachers. After graduating from high school, Meredith began her studies at the University of Delaware, focusing on corporate communications and social sciences. She quickly adjusted to college life, excelled academically, and received a merit-based scholarship. Meredith stayed active in cheerleading, even giving presentations on it. Additionally, she participated in tennis, dance, and theater productions at the university. In her junior year, she secured an internship at a radio station in Philadelphia, where she managed the station's social media. This experience aligned perfectly with her career goals and deepened her passion for communications. Meredith joined an elite student organization, taking on a significant role that helped her build connections for her future career. For her senior project, she created a documentary about Joe Biden, which received notable recognition, including a nomination for a regional Emmy Award. This success opened opportunities for her in the media and communications field. After graduating with a bachelor's degree in 2007, Meredith worked on Capitol Hill as communications manager for U.S. Congressman Mike Castle and ran a winning campaign for former Delaware State Treasurer Chip Flowers. Her ambition and strong work ethic enabled her to excel in fast-paced environments, and she consistently pursued opportunities for intellectual growth. While in college, Meredith met a slightly older young man named Luke Chapman, who was also a graduate of the University of Delaware. They quickly formed a connection and began dating. Meredith and Luke shared many similarities. Both were intelligent, ambitious, and highly motivated. Luke, like Meredith, aimed for a career in public service, eventually became a member of the New York City Council. For a period, their professional journeys aligned. They both achieved significant accomplishments in their fields. Meredith and Luke had a good income and, shortly after their wedding, bought a large home in a quiet and upscale neighborhood in Fairfield Crest. They chose to delay starting a family to concentrate on their careers in politics. They also adopted a golden retriever named Indy, whom they cared for with the same dedication that others might show to a child. After several years, Meredith changed her career significantly. She left the field of politics to pursue a career in education. She obtained a master's degree in education and returned to the University of Delaware, her former school, where she began teaching public relations and digital marketing courses. She created strategies for social media engagement and researched new communication methods. In addition to teaching, she participated in various university committees. In 2013, Meredith took on the role of marketing director while still lecturing and publishing academic work. Her colleagues and students held her in high regard, praising her intelligence, professionalism, and unwavering dedication. Luke's career was progressing well. He dedicated long hours to work and took his responsibilities seriously. Over time, he and Meredith became deeply focused on their personal ambitions, resulting in them being home together less and less often. As a result, a noticeable distance formed between them. Although they appeared to have a perfect relationship on the outside, the connection between them had faded. Conversations about starting a family had stopped, and their marriage felt more like a formality than a true partnership. However, neither of them rushed to end the relationship, as their living arrangement was functioning adequately. They cohabited more like roommates than spouses, managing their own finances and daily routines separately. There were no fights or confrontations. In public, they projected an image of happiness. No one in their social circle knew what was really happening behind closed doors. In 2016, Meredith chose to re-enter politics, this time as a candidate rather than an assistant or staff member. Driven and ambitious, she launched her campaign to challenge the current senator for Delaware's 8th District, David Soccola. Her campaign gained momentum, and she had a good chance of winning. Ultimately, she lost by a narrow margin of less than 5%. After the election, Meredith returned to her career in education and focused on advancing her academic work. By 2017, she decided to hire an assistant, specifically a creative director, to oversee marketing efforts. She posted the job online and received numerous applications. Meredith personally interviewed each candidate, but one, a 49-year-old named Mark Gerardo, particularly impressed her. He met all the qualifications for the role in terms of experience and skills. During the interview, he made a positive impression and agreed to start working immediately. At that time, Mark was living in North Carolina but was ready to move for the position. He had been married to Jennifer Gerardo, but she stayed behind initially to sell their home and finish other obligations before relocating to join him. Mark proved to be a thoughtful, intelligent, and well-educated person with a strong background in marketing. He exceeded expectations right from the start. He quickly built a good working relationship with his new supervisor, and they found common interests almost immediately. Mark was 16 years older than his young boss. At that time, Meredith had grown emotionally distant from the husband she had been with for nearly 10 years, as both were heavily focused on their careers. Mark's situation was more complex. He had been married for almost 25 years and had remained committed to his wife during that time. As co-workers, they developed a close bond. Their teamwork was seamless, and they had a silent understanding of each other. Mark was dependable, efficient, and skilled. However, beneath their professional connection, a deeper relationship was beginning to form, unnoticed by others. For Meredith, Mark became more than just a trusted colleague. She felt comfortable sharing her personal thoughts and feelings with him, which meant a lot to her. In her busy pursuit of success, she had little time for friends, family, or meaningful conversations. Even her husband felt more like a stranger than a partner. But with Mark, she felt calm, safe, and truly understood. She eventually stopped resisting and invited him to spend time together outside of work. Just 2 weeks after Mark moved to Newark, Meredith suggested they meet after work at a local bar to relax. She wanted to have a conversation in a more casual setting. That evening, Mark opened up to her and, for the first time, shared his story. Mark Gerardo was born in 1968. His parents were strict and deeply religious, enforcing high standards of obedience and discipline in their large family. From an early age, Mark understood the importance of hard work and performed well in school. When Mark was 18, he met Jennifer, who was 16 and working as a waitress at a fast food restaurant. He often visited the restaurant, captivated by the girl behind the counter, but he never mustered the courage to talk to her or share his feelings. Jennifer and her family eventually moved to a nearby town, causing her to lose touch with Mark for several years. In 1990, they met again at a local shopping center where Jennifer worked as a sales associate. Mark was excited to see her but felt too shy to make a move. Noticing this, Jennifer took the initiative and asked him out first. Their relationship quickly grew deeper, and in 1992, Mark proposed. Jennifer happily accepted, and less than a year later, they got married. Mark and Jennifer, newly married, settled in Indianapolis, Indiana, where they purchased a home together. At this point, Mark had completed his degree in graphic design and landed a well-paying job in that field. Jennifer was successful as a real estate agent, so they enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle. Although they never had children, they adopted 3 dogs that they treated as part of their family. To their friends, neighbors, and relatives, Mark and Jennifer appeared to be a perfect couple, deeply in love and genuinely happy. They rarely had public disagreements. Their home was known for its peaceful atmosphere. Both were strong, independent individuals with stable incomes and lives. By the mid-2000s, after being together for over 20 years, the Gerardos faced difficulties. Mark experienced the loss of both his parents in a short time, while Jennifer, who had put a lot of effort into starting her own business, encountered significant financial troubles. Overwhelmed by emotional and financial stress, they decided to make a big change in their lives. They sold their house and moved to the peaceful town of Greenville, South Carolina. Mark quickly secured a stable job in marketing, while Jennifer opted to focus on family life as she looked for the right job opportunity. During this time, they traveled a lot and spent quality time together. The emotional distance that had developed between them began to disappear. Their relationship rekindled, and for a year and a half, they experienced what felt like a second honeymoon. In 2017, Mark started looking for new job opportunities to find a more fulfilling role with better pay. During his search, he found a job posting from Meredith. The couple was not afraid of the move. Mark went ahead first because the job needed him to start right away, while Jennifer stayed behind to sell their house and take care of local affairs. She planned to join him in Newark about a month later. That evening, Mark shared his story with Meredith, who listened carefully. In return, she talked about her own life, including her career successes and the slow deterioration of her marriage. As they talked, they connected on a deeper level, feeling as if they had known each other for years. They built a strong sense of trust and stayed at the bar until late at night. Afterward, they went back to Mark's apartment and spent the night together. This marked the beginning of a private relationship that they kept hidden from others. They continued to see each other secretly, often meeting at Mark's place while his wife was out of state. For Meredith, starting a romance with Mark didn't pose any real challenges. Her marriage to Luke had long become a mere formality. For Mark, the situation was much more complicated. First, he had never cheated in his 25 years of marriage. Second, he found himself unexpectedly attracted to Meredith, who was much younger than him. Third, he knew that Meredith was still legally married, just like he was. Despite these issues, Mark and Meredith's relationship continued even after Jennifer moved to Newark. From the beginning, Jennifer felt that something was off. She sensed that another woman had been in their new home, but she chose not to confront her husband right away. Instead, she decided to gather information to confirm her suspicions. Mark often worked late and became more distant from his family. When Jennifer asked him about it, he attributed his behavior to tiredness and a heavy workload. Their physical closeness had almost vanished. This continued for several months until Jennifer confronted him about the possibility of infidelity. Mark denied it. Although he attempted to end his affair with Meredith, their bond was too strong, and after a short break, they resumed their secret meetings. Meredith had made a decision. After discussing it with her husband, Luke, they agreed to proceed with a peaceful divorce. On February 14, 2018, Valentine's Day, Jennifer confronted Mark. She revealed that she was aware of his affair with his boss. She had hired a private investigator who followed Mark, took compromising photos, and recorded the locations where he met Meredith. With this evidence, Mark had no escape. However, he tried to justify his actions, assuring Jennifer that he would end the affair to save their marriage. Unfortunately, this promise was short-lived, as he continued his relationship with Meredith, but now with more caution. Jennifer didn't trust Mark, so she decided to keep a close watch on him. She placed a GPS device in his car and installed monitoring software on his phone and computer. She sewed listening devices into Mark's clothes to secretly record his conversations when they were apart. One of those recordings captured Jennifer's growing insecurity. The situation escalated when Mark discovered the tracking device. Realizing he could no longer put off an important decision, he told Jennifer that he had fallen in love with Meredith, his boss, and wanted to be with her. He also announced his plans to file for divorce. This news was a severe shock for Jennifer, who was 47 at the time. After nearly 25 years of marriage, her husband was leaving her for a younger woman. To make things worse, they had recently moved to a new city, and Jennifer had not yet found a job. This left her feeling financially unstable, emotionally unsupported, and lost. Her life felt like it was falling apart, and she was struggling to cope. By early March 2018, Meredith completed her divorce from Luke and was no longer tied to any commitments. She anticipated that Mark would also finalize his divorce soon, but his situation was more complicated. Due to specific legal requirements in their new state, Mark needed to establish residency before he could file for divorce, and they had only recently moved. At the same time, Meredith resigned from her job at the University of Delaware. She was about to start a new role as Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer at Villanova University, one of Pennsylvania's top institutions. Additionally, she received an offer for a leadership position at Ruffalo Noel Levitz, a prominent consulting firm specializing in higher education strategy. On April 5th, Meredith moved into her new home in Radnor Township, Pennsylvania. She was gradually getting settled, and about a week later, Mark joined her. He had also left his previous job and started a new role at Villanova University as Meredith's personal assistant. It felt like a fresh start for the couple, a promising new chapter. They just needed to complete a few final steps to fully embrace this new beginning, but they were unaware that a deadly threat was already approaching. Hurt and betrayed, Jennifer began plotting a disturbing act of revenge. On April 23, 2018, Mark and Meredith had plans to meet at a local restaurant to celebrate a fresh start. Before heading to the restaurant, Meredith stopped by her house to change clothes while Mark ordered their meal and waited for her. As time went by, Meredith didn't arrive, and she wasn't answering her phone, making Mark uneasy. Suddenly, he received a series of alarming messages from Jen Eyre, filled with anger and resentment. She wished him endless misery, and then he received a photo that shocked him. It was a picture of Meredith's kitchen. In a panic, Mark abandoned everything and rushed to Meredith's house. When he arrived, he saw her car parked in the driveway. A black Chevrolet was also parked down the street, but Mark didn't pay much attention to it at the time. The lights were on inside the house, and the front door was unlocked. However, as soon as he stepped inside, he was met with silence. He went directly to the kitchen, was horrified to find Meredith, 33, and Jen Eyre, 48, lying on the floor in large pools of blood. It was too late for them, both died from gunshot wounds. Mark screamed and rushed outside. His cries alarmed the nearby neighbors, who quickly called for emergency services. Initially, investigators thought Mark might have been involved in the incident due to his emotional struggles and complicated relationship with Jen Eyre. However, this theory was quickly dismissed. The weapon was discovered under Jen Eyre's body and contained only her fingerprints. Authorities concluded that the act was premeditated, followed by her own self-harm. Before the incident, Jen Eyre had sent several emails to a close friend expressing her intentions to do something drastic. Later evidence showed she had spent around 2 weeks preparing for this. She bought a firearm, rented a car, and collected items for a disguise. Jen Eyre also managed to find Meredith's new address on her own. For an entire week, she observed the couple's activities. Neighbors reported seeing a woman in a wig driving a black Chevrolet and lingering in the area, but she did not seem threatening. Mark also remembered noticing the car but thought it belonged to someone from the neighborhood. Jen Eyre had closely observed Meredith's routine and was aware of when they typically returned home. On the day of the incident, she arrived early, parked her car a few blocks away, and approached their house. She gained entry by breaking a window in the backyard and quietly entered. It is believed her intention was to confront, kill both Mark and Meredith before taking her own life. However, things did not go as planned. Meredith came home alone. Investigators later discovered that Meredith had taken out a life insurance policy valued at $500,000 about a year and a half prior, naming her ex-husband, Luke, as the beneficiary. After the divorce, this designation had not been changed. As a result, Luke Chapman became a person of interest as authorities looked into possible indirect involvement in the case. However, this theory was ultimately ruled out due to insufficient evidence. The investigation took only a few days, and authorities quickly closed the case, concluding that the responsible person was deceased, that there were no other suspects. Mark was exonerated but faced significant public and media scrutiny. Rather than withdrawing, he decided to speak out, giving interviews and appearing on talk shows to discuss the events in detail. A year later, Mark released a memoir detailing his relationships with both women and the circumstances surrounding the tragic incident. He expressed how deeply the experience affected him, noting that he never expected the woman he had been with for nearly 25 years could do something so devastating. While the book became a bestseller and was generally well received, public opinion was mixed. Some critics accused him of exploiting the situation and profiting from the tragedy by sharing his personal story. Meredith's family sued Luke after he refused to return the life insurance money he received after her death. The court ruled in his favor, ordering him to return only 10% of the total amount to her family, as the judge found no malicious intent on his part. Meredith had not expected to die and had not updated her policy before her passing. After she died, her remains were cremated, and her urn was given to her parents. Jen Eyre Gerardo was buried in her hometown of Fort Wayne, Indiana. Many still believe that Mark was also meant to be a victim that night but narrowly escaped a tragic fate. On a lonely road in Morelos, a young woman's body was found. Bystanders quickly called for emergency help. She was lying still, her skin had noticeable bruises. There were no ID or personal belongings nearby to identify her. Ariadna Lopez was born on July 5, 1995, in a challenging neighborhood in Mexico City. Despite having limited resources, she grew up in a loving environment. Her mother raised her and her older brother, Omar Rodriguez. Their father was mostly absent and had little interest in being involved in their lives. In his absence, Omar took on the role of a protector and role model for Ariadna, creating a strong bond that gave her a sense of security knowing she was supported. Ariadna had a warm and friendly personality, which made her well liked by her friends. She easily connected with others and was known for her honesty, helpfulness. During her school years, she formed close friendships, shared dreams about the future. However, her adulthood was marked by tragedy. In 2018, when Ariadna was only 23, her mother was diagnosed with cancer. The illness progressed quickly, and the family soon faced the heart-wrenching loss. The death of her mother affected both Ariadna and Omar deeply. This experience strengthened their relationship, forced Ariadna to grow up quickly, taking charge of her own life. Before her mother's illness, Ariadna started dating a young man, and their relationship progressed quickly. Soon, she discovered she was pregnant. The birth of their son was a significant turning point, but it did not bring long-term stability to their relationship. They realized early that they were not compatible as a couple and decided to part ways. However, they continued to work together to co-parent their son. As a new mother, Ariadna faced various challenges. She had to juggle parenting with the need to find a stable job. Her journey toward financial independence began when she secured a job at a popular bar in Mexico City that catered to affluent clients. This role came with high expectations regarding professionalism and social skills. At the bar, Ariadna learned to interact effectively with diverse people. Despite the stress of the job, she met its challenges by using her charm and strong work ethic. When the global issue struck, Ariadna's life changed dramatically. The bar where she worked closed, and she lost her job. Instead of feeling defeated, Ariadna viewed this as an opportunity to pursue a long-held dream, opening her own beauty salon. This new venture represented her determination to shape her own life. With her experience and a strong network of contacts, she successfully established a business that provided financial security for herself and her son. During this time, Ariadna began a new relationship with a man she felt a strong connection with. This relationship brought her happiness and a sense of stability. She balanced her responsibilities between her son, her business, and her new partner. Although her days were busy, she welcomed each moment with appreciation, eager for the new opportunities that came her way. By the age of 27, Ariadna's life was like a carefully arranged puzzle. Every success and challenge added to the overall picture of her journey. She had faced loss, rebuilt her life from scratch, focused on her son's future, and achieved her independence. However, just as this chapter of her life seemed to be starting on a positive note, it was unfortunately a precursor to something much more troubling. Ariadna met Vanessa Flores through mutual friends at a social event where Ariadna was with her friends. Vanessa made a strong impression. She was young, energetic, and charismatic, easily attracting attention with everyone around her. However, those close to Vanessa often noted that she could be unpredictable. Behind her charm, there were some more difficult aspects to her personality, and her actions sometimes surprised others. Rodel Astudillo Garcia, a middle-aged entrepreneur, often appeared in Vanessa's social group. His name was frequently associated with rumors due to his wealth, influence, and extravagant lifestyle. He was often seen with younger women who wanted to join his circle. There were many whispers about him, including tales of high-profile connections and even suggestions of links to organized groups. However, no one in his social circle could confirm any of these claims. Rodel himself steered clear of direct questions regarding his past or business dealings. His presence garnered both respect and a sense of unease. Ariadna was smart and independent, but she didn't realize how different her new friends were from her usual social circle. Vanessa, eager to impress, often boasted about her connections to influential people, particularly Rattel, whom she claimed could solve problems effortlessly. Gradually, Ariadna began spending more time with this group. Vanessa seemed genuinely intrigued by Ariadna, lavishing attention on her and diligently trying to earn her trust. When Rattel learned about Ariadna from Vanessa, he quickly wanted to meet her. During their first encounter, he surprised her with his attentiveness and charm. His confidence attracted people, including Ariadna. However, behind his polished facade lay a more complicated character. Those who had interacted with him mentioned his manipulative nature. Despite this, Ariadna perceived him as respectful and even kind. Vanessa played an important role in building the connection. She often invited Ariadna to events where Rattel was also present, fostering a welcoming atmosphere. However, as time went on, small warning signs began to emerge. Ariadna's close friends started advising her to be wary of this group. Some knew about Rattel's dubious reputation and Vanessa's unpredictable behavior. They were concerned that this new social circle might carry hidden dangers. Ariadna dismissed her friends' concerns about her new social circle, viewing her friendship with Vanessa as a refreshing escape from everyday stress. It offered her a chance to experience new things. Meanwhile, Rattel tried to win her over by being generous and friendly, inviting her to dinners and parties that felt fun. Even though Ariadna was in a relationship, she continued to keep her friendships and go to social events. Those who knew her said her partner trusted her and had no issues with her socializing. As time went on, Ariadna noticed some changes in her relationships. Vanessa began to call her more often, suggesting outings and making plans that focused on spending time together. At the same time, Rattel was gradually trying to become a more significant part of her life, presenting himself as someone who could always provide help or support. Unknowingly, Ariadna was getting deeper into their dynamic. On October 30th, 2022, Ariadna accepted Vanessa's invitation to spend the evening with friends. They planned to start at a popular restaurant in downtown Mexico City. Vanessa assured her it would be a relaxed evening filled with good food and enjoyable conversation. Rattel was also expected to join them, which made Ariadna feel slightly uncomfortable. Although she had her reservations about him, she didn't want to disappoint Vanessa, so she decided to go. The group met in the evening at Fisher's, a seafood restaurant, the venue known for its upscale atmosphere and stylish decor, which was lively. At their table, the mood was relaxed. Wine and cocktails were being enjoyed, platters of appetizers added to the festive feel of the night. Rattel took the spotlight, sharing stories, proposing toasts, and engaging playfully with the waitstaff. He exuded confidence and made sure everyone noticed him. Vanessa joined in, lightening the mood with jokes and laughter. The rest of the group attempted to keep the upbeat vibe, but Ariadna stood out because she seemed uncomfortable. She frequently checked her phone, responding to messages and looking concerned as she read the screen. She often glanced at Rattel, as if trying to understand unspoken feelings behind his words. Vanessa tried to draw her back into the fun, urging her to relax and have another drink, but Ariadna remained reserved, her demeanor suggesting that something was troubling her more than the lively atmosphere could hide. In the evening, Ariadna shared a puzzling message on her social media: "Would you miss me if I disappeared?" This caused concern among her followers. Some thought it was just a joke, but her close friends and colleagues felt it was out of character for her. The message created an unsettling feeling that, at the time, no one understood would be connected to her last hours. As the night went on, the group decided to continue their evening at Rattel's house, a suggestion made by Rattel himself. Vanessa supported the idea, claiming it would be a more relaxed and private setting. Although Ariadna felt uncertain, she eventually agreed after her friends pressured her. The rest of the group followed along, and they all traveled together to Rattel's home in his vehicle. His house was situated in an upscale neighborhood that reflected his public persona. Inside, the decor was sleek and modern, featuring luxurious elements. Upon arrival, the group settled into a spacious living room where music played and drinks were served, allowing the night to unfold. However, Ariadna started to feel increasingly uneasy. She stepped away several times to check her phone, pretending to take calls, which made her seem distant and distracted. Vanessa noticed her behavior and began whispering to Roddle, which only added to the tension in the room. Near midnight, Ariadna expressed her desire to go home because she was tired. Vanessa encouraged her to stay a bit longer, just another half hour. Roddle said nothing, but his lingering gaze on Ariadna made her uneasy. As the night came to a close, the guests began to depart, and Ariadna was among the last to leave. After that evening, no one in the group would see her alive again. On October 31st, the night before the Day of the Dead, Ricardo Calderon and a friend set off on a bike ride south from Mexico City to Tepoztlan, a popular day trip destination. They turned off the road to rest outside the colonial town. That's where they made a grisly discovery: a woman's body in the bushes beneath an overpass, within earshot of passing traffic. She was lying on her back, with her arms spread out, her beige skirt pulled up above her waist, and her right foot clad in a white high-top sneaker. Her hair was braided, and she had no identification or belongings. They quickly contacted the police, who arrived several hours later. While waiting, they took photos of the scene to document details that might assist in identifying the woman. When the police arrived, they secured the area, started gathering evidence. They found visible tire tracks in the dirt and markings that indicated the body had been moved. Forensic specialists observed signs of a struggle, but they couldn't determine the exact cause of death right away. No weapons were discovered, and the body had no obvious injuries that could explain what happened. There were also no documents or personal items to identify her. Hours later, images of the scene began to spread on social media, causing widespread concern. Among those who saw the photos were friends and family of Ariadna. Her father and her brother, Omar, recognized familiar features, including her tattoos. The tattoo reads, Armida, the name of Ariadna's mother. Another is a sunflower, her signature symbol. They feared the worst, so they filed a missing person report and informed the authorities that the woman found might be Ariadna Lopez. Meanwhile, authorities in the state of Morelos began a separate investigation. However, the local police's initial actions faced significant criticism. They mishandled evidence collection, leaving many crucial details at the scene undocumented. This raised serious concerns about the professionalism and integrity of the involved law enforcement. When Ariadna's family came to identify the body, they faced their worst fears. Omar recognized his sister by a tattoo on her shoulder. The shock was overwhelming, especially upon seeing the state of her body, which bore bruises and trauma on her face and arms, indicating some form of violence. In contrast, the police's initial statements were vague and unconvincing. The family responded by calling for justice, demanding a transparent investigation. On the same day, they contacted friends who used social media to help raise awareness. The campaign quickly gained traction, attracting thousands of users. Despite increasing public pressure, the Morelos police continued to believe that the death could have been an accident. They indicated that a final conclusion could only be reached after the forensic report was finished. This position only fueled further suspicion, especially as rumors started to spread that influential individuals might be attempting to cover up the truth. Investigators first interviewed Roddle and Vanessa, the last known people to see Ariadna alive. Their statements provided the initial account of the situation. Roddle stated that after the party, Ariadna chose to leave his house and called a taxi. He described her as a little upset but not overly concerned. He said he walked her to the door, and she left alone. Vanessa supported his story, confirming that Ariadna took a taxi but did not mention her destination. However, inconsistencies in their account quickly surfaced. The main issue was the absence of any confirmed taxi records. Neither Roddle nor Vanessa could provide the contact information for a driver or any evidence to back up their claims. Later, investigators checked several taxi service logs in the area but found no record of Ariadna being picked up that night. Another concern was the inconsistency in Vanessa's story. Her answers changed depending on the questions asked. At first, she claimed that Ariadna left the party on her own. Later, she mentioned that they had an argument, implying that Ariadna might have been emotionally troubled. Ariadna's friends reported to the police that Vanessa contacted them after Ariadna's disappearance, trying to suggest that Ariadna was in a bad state of mind, referring to her vague social media post. This post, made just hours before Ariadna's disappearance, raised concerns for many. While her family and close friends initially viewed it as a joke, investigators began to think it might signal her emotional distress on the night of the party. Additionally, Vanessa's increasingly anxious behavior was alarming. In messages to Ariadna's friends, she appeared hesitant to discuss the events of that night. At one point, she expressed fear of being suspected, though she didn't explain why. These clues led investigators to believe that Vanessa might be hiding important information. The initial investigation into Ariadna's death did not provide a clear explanation of what happened. However, further inquiries by law enforcement and independent experts revealed important evidence. 2 autopsies, surveillance footage, and text messages from the suspects' phones became crucial in piecing together the events. Oriel Carmona, the state's chief prosecutor, told reporters that an autopsy determined Ariadna Lopez died of severe alcohol poisoning. He stated that investigators found no signs of violence. Sitting at the same table, Yasmin Herrera Soto, the chief medical examiner, clarified the findings. The autopsy showed significant bruising but no fatal injuries. According to the autopsy report, none of the 17 fresh wounds on Ariadna's arms, legs, and torso broke the skin or caused external bleeding, and there were no broken bones or signs of assault. In an interview, Pereira noted that there were a pair of bruises on the back of Ariadna's head that caused internal bleeding in her skull, but no brain damage, and that the bruising was consistent with a fall. The cuts on Lopez's forehead were believed to have been caused by insects attacking her while her body was outside. Prosecutors stated that lab tests showed Ariadna's blood alcohol level was 0.498, a level that is 6 times the legal limit for driving in the United States. According to Carmona, Ariadna choked on her own vomit. Nevertheless, her family strongly disputed this finding. Ariadna's family, unsatisfied with the official explanation, requested an independent second autopsy. Under pressure from the public and her relatives, Ariadna's body was sent to a forensic institute in Mexico City. The results of this second examination contradicted the original conclusions. Experts discovered multiple injuries, including head trauma, bruises, and signs of struggle on her arms and legs, suggesting she may have tried to defend herself. These findings indicated that Ariadna's death was not accidental or solely due to alcohol. Consequently, her death was reclassified as the result of violent actions, leading authorities to treat the case as a criminal matter. Security footage from Roddle's apartment building provided crucial evidence in the case. One video shows Roddle early the morning after the party. A bald, bearded man dragged Ariadna Lopez's body, his legs stiff from rigor mortis, through the hallway and down to the garage. He carried the corpse over his right shoulder to the back of a black SUV, then hurried to the driver's seat. Mexico City Mayor Claudia Sheinbaum identified the man as Roddle Astudillo and accused him of driving the body and dumping it near Tepoztlan, a charge prosecutors later said was substantiated based on analysis of his cell phone records. Sheinbaum said Astudillo likely chose to dump the body in neighboring Morelos state because of his relationship with Carmona, the prosecutor she accused of covering up the case. Sheinbaum said that they had tried to blame the victim. He added that never again should a woman's murder be covered up and a woman be defamed and harmed. Meanwhile, Vanessa often told Ariadna's friends that she might have been having emotional difficulties and suggested she could have intentionally disappeared. However, her friends described Ariadna as lively and optimistic, with no known emotional issues. When the second autopsy and surveillance footage, it became evident that the initial theories of an accidental death or voluntary departure from Roddle's home were not valid. The evidence instead indicated a violent act and a conscious attempt to conceal the body. These findings led to legal actions against Roddle and Vanessa, who would soon face charges in court. Vanessa was the first to be arrested. Authorities discovered that she had been in regular contact with Roddle after Ariadna's death, discussing ways to evade legal consequences. Her arrest occurred amid significant media attention. During initial questioning, Vanessa claimed she was not involved in Ariadna's death, but her statements contained numerous contradictions. She asserted that she had gone to bed early on the night of the incident and knew nothing about what happened afterward. However, further investigations disproved this claim. Message logs indicated that she was aware of the situation and had conversed with Roddle about important details. Investigators also found that Vanessa had taken actions to destroy potential evidence, including deleting photos and conversations, trying to distance herself from the aftermath. Realizing the overwhelming evidence against him, Roddle chose to turn himself in. He arrived at the police station with his legal team and claimed he was innocent. He stated that he did not harm Ariadna. Instead, he panicked after finding her unresponsive in his home the morning after the party and attempted to conceal her body, fearing he would be blamed. However, investigators found significant issues with his version of events. First, a second autopsy revealed clear signs of physical trauma, contradicting his assertion that she died without any interference. Second, surveillance footage showed him intentionally carrying her body in a way that suggested he was trying to avoid being seen, which is not typical behavior for someone seeking help. Furthermore, his text messages with Vanessa indicated that they had coordinated their stories and worked to mislead others about what actually happened. During the investigation, alarming new evidence came to light pointing to possible corruption. There were increasing suspicions about a link between Roddle and a prosecutor in Morelos. Notably, the initial autopsy report from that state failed to mention any injuries that suggested violence. Public activists and Ariadna's family accused the prosecutor of abusing their position to protect Roddle, leading to widespread public anger. In response, authorities in Mexico City began a formal review of the prosecutor's actions, while Internal Affairs launched an independent investigation into potential misconduct. Some witnesses alleged that Roddle had ties to criminal groups, which could explain his seeming assurance that he would escape punishment. Nevertheless, both Vanessa and Roddle denied any direct involvement, instead choosing to defend each other, deflect questions. This evasiveness heightened investigators' suspicions and played a significant role in the decision to keep them in temporary custody. The reasons and events of that night prompted a thorough investigation. To find the truth, investigators had to piece together the timeline, analyze physical evidence, and study the actions of everyone at the gathering. Gradually, a clearer understanding started to take shape. Ariadna Lopez arrived at Fisher's, a bustling seafood restaurant in Mexico City, at around 6 p.m. on October 30th, wearing a long beige dress and white high-top sneakers. She hugged both Vanessa and Roddle. The trio, along with 3 others, left the restaurant about an hour later in Roddle's black SUV. All 6 arrived at Roddle's building at around 7:15 p.m. They took the elevator to his apartment. At first glance, everything seemed typical. There was laughter, conversation, and music, but subtle hints indicated something was off. Witnesses and text message analysis showed that Ariadna was unusually quiet and distracted. She often checked her phone, sending messages and answering calls, behavior her friends noted was unlike her during social events. This detail became important in the investigation. Ariadna's messages to a friend revealed her worries about the gathering and discomfort with certain people there. Although Vanessa and Rotel were the hosts, there was noticeable tension between them. Witnesses later noted that Vanessa directed several sharp comments at Ariadna throughout the night. Ariadna, wishing to avoid drama, responded calmly and tried to defuse any potential conflict. As the night progressed and alcohol began to affect everyone, tensions intensified. Vanessa, already emotional, raised her voice multiple times, accusing Ariadna of being disrespectful and unfriendly. No one else at the gathering agreed with these accusations, but the atmosphere became increasingly tense. While Roddle tried to stay neutral, it was evident that he felt uncomfortable with Vanessa's actions. The turning point occurred the next morning. Witnesses reported seeing Ariadna heading toward the exit, apparently trying to leave the house, but for unknown reasons, she returned shortly after. It is thought that Vanessa confronted her again at that time, escalating their argument. Investigators believe jealousy was at the heart of their conflict, as Vanessa accused Ariadna of attracting too much attention from Roddle. Messages found on phones showed that Vanessa and Roddle later discussed the tense moments from that night. Within about half an hour, 3 of the 6 had left, leaving only Rodel, Vanessa, and Ariadna inside. The case file indicates that Vanessa, influenced by alcohol, became increasingly aggressive. At some point, investigators think an altercation took place, resulting in the fatal injuries Ariadna sustained. Why did Ariadna share such an unusual message on social media that night? Initially, many assumed it was a joke, but her close friends later confirmed that she was likely feeling uneasy because of Vanessa's behavior and the tense vibe at the gathering. The post might have been her way of expressing her discomfort or reaching out for help. As pieced together the events, it became clear that Vanessa's jealousy, heightened by alcohol and her emotional instability, significantly contributed to what transpired. Instead of seeking assistance, Rodel appeared to prioritize hiding what happened, which ultimately made the situation worse. Ariadna's family has worked hard to reveal the full truth about her death. They organized protests, created social media campaigns, and made sure the public remained focused on the case. One major success was attracting international media attention, which increased pressure on Mexico's judicial system to be transparent. In late November, hundreds of people participated in a protest march in Mexico City. The preliminary court proceedings in Ariadna's case were a key moment in their quest for justice. Despite facing some resistance from authorities, her family and their legal team ensured that the case was handled openly and fairly, with all details thoroughly examined. The public and the media closely followed every step of the investigation and court process, minimizing the chances for cover-ups or misinformation. The legal process centered on the actions of Rodel and Vanessa. During the hearings, prosecutors presented strong evidence, including surveillance videos, audio recordings, and text messages from their phones. This evidence suggested not only that they helped hide Ariadna's body but also that they might have been involved in aggressive behavior leading up to her death. The defense claimed it was all a tragic accident, but the extensive witness testimonies and forensic findings raised significant doubts about that explanation. A key part of the trial was uncovering the motive behind the crime. Witnesses who knew Vanessa described her as emotionally unstable and prone to outbursts, especially when drinking. Rodel was depicted as having a questionable past with possible connections to criminal groups, which further complicated his role that night. Although both defendants denied any responsibility for Ariadna's death, their statements often conflicted with established facts, increasing suspicions against them. At this time, the final verdict has not yet been reached, and the investigation is still ongoing. However, prosecutors have charged the suspects with homicide, which may be categorized as femicide, a crime motivated by gender-based violence. In Mexico, this classification is seen as an aggravating circumstance and could result in a maximum penalty of up to 70 years in prison if both suspects are convicted. In January 2023, after reviewing conflicting autopsy results and other evidence, Mexico's Federal Attorney General's office sided with Mexico City prosecutors. The Attorney General stated that the cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head, resulting from a blunt instrument or contact with a flat, hard surface. The coroner's conclusion that Ariadna's death was related to excessive drinking was deemed unacceptable by the Attorney General. Investigators determined that she died in Rodel's apartment on the evening of October 30th, between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m., but they did not provide details regarding a possible motive. Morelos prosecutor, Carmona, denied any wrongdoing. He described the work of his forensic detectives as impeccable and dismissed the Attorney General's findings as mere opinion. Mexico City authorities increased security for the Lopez family to mitigate fears of retaliation by Rodel's accomplices. Ariadna's 7-year-old son is now living with her older brother, Omar. As the closest male role model, he has assumed the responsibilities of both guardian and father. Omar is fully committed to meeting the child's needs while also honoring his sister's memory by providing the love and stability that Ariadna once offered. The rest of the family has rallied around him, determined to help the boy cope with his loss and ensure that he grows up in a nurturing environment. Ariadna Lopez became a symbol of the fight for equality as women marched in the streets on Women's Day with her image on signs. In the heart of Sydney's central business district, where towering skyscrapers define the skyline and the city pulses with activity, a devastating crime unfolded on August 13, 2019, claiming the life of Michaela Dunn. 3 years earlier, on May 14, 2016, in the vibrant suburb of Parramatta, a brutal assault left Dasha Volnukin deeply traumatized, with her death in May 2018 adding to the sorrow. These incidents, occurring in modern urban settings, shocked their communities and sparked widespread concern about safety in Australia's cities, particularly for those in vulnerable professions like escorting. The stories of Michaela and Dasha, though distinct, highlight the hidden dangers faced by escort profession and the urgent need for systemic protections. Michaela Dunn, a 24-year-old Sydney resident, was tragically murdered in 2019, leaving her family, friends, and community grappling with profound loss. Her death underscored the risks that can persist even in environments designed for security, challenging assumptions about urban safety. Similarly, Dasha Volnukin, a 22-year-old Ukrainian model who had moved to Australia in 2015, endured a horrific assault that marked her life with lasting trauma. Her resilience in reporting the crime led to justice, but her untimely death 2 years later deepened the tragedy. On August 13, 2019, at approximately 1:30 p.m., police received an urgent call about a violent incident in a high-rise apartment on Clarence Street, a bustling thoroughfare in Sydney's CBD lined with corporate offices and residential complexes. Emergency services arrived promptly, discovering a distressing scene inside a modern apartment building. Forensic investigators cordoned off the area, documenting evidence of a struggle, such as disarrayed furniture and personal items. Neighbors reported hearing disturbances, but the building's soundproofed walls obscured critical details, complicating initial inquiries. The investigation revealed that Michaela had been fatally wounded, her body bearing a severe neck injury that marked the brutality of the attack. 3 years earlier, on May 14, 2016, at 1:30 a.m., a similar tragedy struck in Parramatta, a dynamic suburb 25 kilometers west of Sydney's CBD, known for its rich cultural diversity and thriving commercial scene. Dasha Volnukin faced a terrifying assault in a residential unit. The incident unfolded discreetly, leaving few immediate clues. Security footage captured a man, later identified as Mustafa Kairisai, 28, entering and exiting the building, but provided no direct evidence of the violence that transpired inside. Dasha's prompt reporting to police, including detailed descriptions of her assailant, was crucial in advancing the investigation, despite the private nature of the crime. Michaela and Dasha, both young women in their early 20s, lived in Sydney, residing in apartments equipped with modern security features. The fact that these violent acts occurred in private, supposedly safe spaces stunned local residents and prompted extensive police investigations. Authorities worked diligently to establish timelines, interview potential witnesses, and determine whether the cases were connected. While no direct link was confirmed, both women worked as escorts, a legal but high-risk profession in Australia, which emerged as a significant commonality. This shared profession highlighted the vulnerabilities inherent in escort profession, where financial independence comes at the cost of exposure to potential danger. To fully appreciate the impact of these events, it's essential to understand Michaela and Dasha as individuals with unique aspirations and challenges. Their lives, though cut short by tragedy, reflect the complexities of navigating personal and professional choices in a fast-paced, high-cost city like Sydney. Michaela Dunn was a proud Sydney native, raised in inner West Sydney, a region celebrated for its close-knit communities and eclectic atmosphere. By 2019, she had entered the escort industry, a decision that offered financial independence in Sydney's competitive economy. Escorting, while legal in New South Wales, can provide significant earnings, enabling flexibility and opportunities like travel. Michaela's choice to keep her work private was likely influenced by societal stigma, which is a common practice among escorts to protect their personal relationships. Friends remembered her as a compassionate and resilient individual, whose warmth left a lasting impression on those around her. Her engagement with Sydney's vibrant cultural scenes, from art galleries to nightlife, reflected a young woman embracing the city's dynamic spirit. Dasha Volnukin, born in Canada, arrived in Australia in 2015, drawn to Sydney's cosmopolitan allure and economic prospects. At 22, she worked as a model and escort, roles that showcased her confidence and adaptability. Her move to Australia was driven by a desire for new opportunities, but the challenges of building a life in a new country were significant. Dasha's decision to enter the escort industry was kept discreet, likely to avoid judgment in a society that often stigmatizes escort. Friends described her as empathetic and determined, qualities that helped her navigate the complexities of migration and work. Her brief tenure as an escort exposed her to rapid risks, culminating in the traumatic assault that would shape her final years. Both Michaela and Dasha pursued escorting to achieve financial stability and shape their futures in Sydney's demanding environment. The promise of autonomy in a city with high living costs was compelling, yet their profession brought them into contact with dangerous individuals. These incidents underscore the vulnerabilities inherent in escort, despite its legality, and highlight the need for enhanced protections to ensure worker safety. The events leading to these tragedies began with Michaela's murder on August 13, 2019. That day, Sydney's CBD was alive with midday activity, its streets filled with office workers and visitors. In her Clarence Street apartment, designed with modern security measures for young professionals, Michaela prepared to meet a client for a routine appointment. The client, Mert Ney, entered the building mid-afternoon, passing through standard entry protocols. What began as a typical booking turned deadly when Ney attacked Michaela, inflicting a fatal neck wound. He fled via the fire stairs, bloodied, leaving behind evidence of the crime. Police found Michaela deceased in her apartment, a space intended as a sanctuary, revealing a shocking breach of safety. On May 14, 2016, Dasha faced her own harrowing ordeal in a Parramatta residential unit. Arranging a client visit, she met Mustafa Kairisai, who appeared unremarkable upon entry. Inside the apartment, Kairisai turned violent, threatening Dasha with a knife, blindfolding her, and binding her with duct tape. He abused her and forced her to shower, attempting to erase evidence. Dasha survived by complying, but the trauma was profound. After Kairisai fled, she reported the incident to police, providing critical details that aided the investigation. The building's modern design and privacy features limited witness accounts, posing challenges for authorities, but Dasha's courage in reporting the crime was pivotal. Both Michaela and Dasha encountered clients who transformed private meetings into violent ordeals, exposing the inherent dangers of their profession. These incidents, occurring in secure urban settings, challenged assumptions about safety in modern cities and sparked public discourse about the risks faced by sex workers. The investigation into Michaela's death began swiftly on August 13, 2019, at her Clarence Street apartment. Police discovered her body with a fatal neck injury, and forensic teams meticulously collected evidence, including traces of the struggle. Security footage revealed Mert Ney, aged 21, entering the building at 1:30 p.m. and fleeing bloodied at 1:50 p.m., brandishing a knife. Ney's erratic behavior on Clarence Street alarmed pedestrians, leading bystanders to pursue him with improvised tools, a chair and a milk crate, restraining him near Wynyard Lane until police arrested him at 2 p.m. A USB drive containing violent material was recovered, but no terrorist motives were confirmed. Ney, unemployed and residing in Blacktown, had documented mental health struggles, which police noted as a potential factor, though his intent remained unclear. A search of his Blacktown residence provided further context, suggesting financial distress may have contributed to his actions. Dasha's assault investigation progressed due to her immediate report on May 14, 2016. She described her assailant's appearance and actions, which, combined with CCTV footage from the Parramatta unit, helped police identify Kairisai. The footage showed Kairisai entering and exiting calmly, offering no hint of the violence inside. Police canvassed Parramatta, but the building's security measures limited witness accounts. Dasha's description aligned with other assault reports, leading to Kairisai's arrest on May 28, 2016, in Bondi after a pursuit. He was linked to multiple attacks on escorts in 2016, indicating a pattern of predatory behavior. Mert Ney, responsible for Michaela's murder, had a troubled background marked by unemployment and mental health issues. Living in crisis housing in Blacktown in 2019, he faced significant personal challenges, including financial instability and untreated mental health conditions. His arrest initiated legal proceedings for murder, attempted murder of another individual, Lynn Bowe, aged 41, and related offenses. No clear motive was established, with his actions attributed to a combination of mental instability and situational factors. Mustafa Kayirasai, born around 1985, targeted escorts in Sydney during 2016. Court records indicate his attacks were planned, exploiting the vulnerabilities of escort. On May 14, he abused Dasha, using a knife to intimidate her and employing tactics like blindfolding and binding to control the situation. Similar incidents in the CBD and Parramatta suggested a deliberate pattern. Kayirasai's defense claimed his actions were influenced by personal issues, but evidence of premeditation prevailed. He faced multiple charges, reflecting the severity of his crimes. The cases of Mert Nay and Mustafa Kayirasai illustrate divergent pathways to violence, each underscoring unique challenges in addressing crime in urban Australia. Nay's attack on Michaela was a chaotic, impulsive act, seemingly driven by personal distress and mental health struggles, reflecting a life marked by instability. In contrast, Kayirasai's assault on Dasha was systematic and predatory, exploiting the vulnerabilities of sex workers in a calculated manner. Their arrests mark the beginning of legal efforts to hold them accountable for the harm inflicted on Michaela, Dasha, and others. The legal proceedings for Dasha's case unfolded at Sydney's Downing Centre District Court, focusing on the May 14, 2016, assault and related crimes. Prosecutors presented Dasha's testimony, which detailed the harrowing ordeal, alongside CCTV footage from the Parramatta unit that corroborated her account. The evidence highlighted Kayirasai's methodical tactics, including his use of a knife and attempts to erase evidence. The defense argued that Kayirasai's actions were influenced by personal circumstances, but the prosecution emphasized his intent to harm. Dasha passed away in May 2018, 2 years after the assault. Her loss deepened the sorrow felt by her friends and community, who remembered her as a vibrant, resilient individual. Tributes highlighted her determination and warmth, qualities that shone through despite the trauma she endured. Her work as a model and her efforts to build a life in Australia reflected a young woman full of promise, making her death all the more poignant. Mert Nay's trial, following his August 2019 arrest, was a significant undertaking at the Downing Centre District Court. Prosecutors argued that Nay's actions were premeditated, pointing to his possession of a knife and his behavior after the crime, which included fleeing bloodied and brandishing the weapon in public. Justice Peter Johnson, presiding over the case, described the attack as exceptionally brutal, noting its devastating impact on Michaela's family and community. Nay's defense team highlighted his mental health struggles, including untreated conditions that may have contributed to his actions. However, evidence of his awareness during the crime undermined these arguments. On May 14, 2021, Nay was sentenced to 44 years in prison with a 33-year non-parole period, reflecting the severity of the offense. In October 2023, an appeal reduced his sentence to 40 years with a 30-year non-parole period, acknowledging procedural considerations while maintaining significant accountability. In 2022, Nay pleaded guilty to assaulting a guard at Goulburn Correctional Centre, receiving a concurrent sentence that did not extend his overall term, raising questions about managing ongoing risks posed by incarcerated individuals. Sydney's CBD, a vibrant hub of commerce and culture, and Parramatta, a multicultural suburb undergoing rapid urban renewal, served as the backdrops for these tragedies. Michaela's apartment on Clarence Street, located near iconic landmarks like the Sydney Harbour Bridge and the Parramatta unit where Dasha was assaulted, represented modern urban living with advanced security features. Yet, these settings fail to protect Michaela and Dasha, exposing a stark paradox: private spaces, designed for safety, can become sites of extreme violence. This contradiction fueled public discourse about urban safety and the vulnerabilities inherent in certain professions, particularly escort. The escort industry in Australia, legally recognized in New South Wales since 1995, operates within a complex and often challenging landscape. Escorts, whether working independently or through agencies, can earn substantial incomes, particularly in high-cost cities like Sydney, where living expenses drive many to seek lucrative opportunities. Michaela and Dasha's decisions to enter this field likely stemmed from the need for financial independence in a competitive economy. Escorting offers flexibility and the potential for significant earnings, with hourly rates in Sydney often ranging from $300 to $1,000, depending on services and clientele. However, the industry's risks, violence, stigma, and inadequate safety measures place workers in precarious positions. Unlike other professions, escorting lacks standardized protections, such as mandatory client screening, accessible emergency support systems, or comprehensive training on risk management. These gaps were evident in Michaela and Dasha's cases, where private meetings with clients turned deadly or traumatic, highlighting the urgent need for reform. Police investigations into both cases relied on established methods for urban crime, including security footage, witness statements, and victim reports. The rapid arrest of Mert Ney on August 13, 2019, demonstrated the power of community intervention. Bystanders, witnessing Ney's erratic behavior on Clarence Street, courageously restrained him using a chair and a milk crate, preventing further harm until police arrived. Their actions became a symbol of community resilience, widely covered by Australian media, and sparked discussions about the role of civilians in public safety. Dasha's prompt and detailed report on May 14, 2016, was equally critical, enabling police to identify Mustafa Kairisai through CCTV and her descriptions. However, the scarcity of witnesses in modern residential buildings, designed with privacy in mind, posed significant challenges. In Parramatta, the unit's security measures limited external accounts, complicating efforts to corroborate Dasha's testimony and underscoring a broader issue in investigating private space crimes. Serial offender Mustafa Kairisai was sentenced to 34 years in prison in August 2021 for 30 counts of abuse, abuse assault, and child abuse, having abuse assaulted a schoolgirl over 5 hours at 10 locations in 2016. He received an additional 38-year sentence for the abuse and robbery of 7 other women in the same year, including Dasha Volnukin. In 2021, Kairisai was given just 12 months to live after being diagnosed with an undisclosed terminal illness and undergoing chemotherapy in prison. Had he survived, he would not have been eligible for release until 2066. Correctional Services NSW confirmed that 31-year-old Kairisai died in the high-security prison block at Prince of Wales Hospital in January 2022. Australia's legal system, grounded in common law principles, delivered verdicts in both cases, but the outcomes revealed systemic challenges. Ney's 40-year sentence, adjusted on appeal in October 2023, and Kairisai's 72-year sentence in 2021 provided a measure of accountability, yet the prolonged trials and complex defenses, particularly Ney's mental health arguments, delayed resolution for the victims' families. The economic realities of Sydney, one of the world's most expensive cities, played a significant role in Michaela and Dasha's choices. With median rent for a one-bedroom apartment in the CBD exceeding $700 per week in 2019, and living costs rising steadily, many young people turn to high-paying industries like escorting to afford a comfortable lifestyle. This economic pressure, combined with the flexibility of escort profession, makes it an attractive option, yet the lack of regulatory oversight leaves workers exposed to exploitation and violence. Comparative data from other decriminalized jurisdictions, such as New Zealand, suggests that mandatory client registries and worker support networks can reduce violence, offering a model for Australia to consider. Implementing such measures could address the systemic vulnerabilities exposed by these cases, ensuring that financial necessity does not come at the cost of safety. The role of technology in these investigations also warrants examination. CCTV footage was pivotal in both cases, providing visual evidence that linked Ney and Kairisai to the crime scenes. However, the limitations of surveillance in private spaces, where cameras are restricted to common areas like lobbies, highlight a gap in evidence collection. Balancing technological innovation with civil liberties is a critical challenge for Australian law enforcement, particularly in high-density urban areas where crimes often occur behind closed doors. The legacy of Michaela Dunn and Dasha Volnukin serves as a powerful call to action. Their stories, though marked by loss, highlight the resilience of individuals and communities in the face of adversity. Michaela's vibrant engagement with Sydney's cultural life and Dasha's determination to build a new life in Australia reflect young women full of potential, whose lives were cut short by preventable violence. By addressing the systemic issues exposed by their cases, urban safety gaps, escort vulnerabilities, mental health deficiencies, and sentencing disparities, Australia can honor their memory through meaningful change. Enhanced protections, better support systems, and a commitment to equity can ensure that no one else faces such preventable harm, creating safer, more inclusive communities for all. The distressing call reporting a death shattered the tranquility of a suburb in North Carolina. The victim was identified as Nabaruna Karmakar, a talented engineer from Kolkata remembered for her intelligence and kindness. She was found dead under suspicious circumstances. Nabaruna Karmakar grew up in Behala, a lively and culturally rich area in southwest Kolkata. Even as a child, she was known for her strong academic abilities and quiet focus. Her father, Tapan Karmakar, worked as a general manager at the Steel Authority of India Limited. Her mother, Sipra, took care of the home. Raised in a joint family, Nabaruna learned the importance of discipline, humility, and a love of learning. These values greatly influenced her life. She attended Vidyabharati School, where teachers considered her an excellent student. She excelled in science and mathematics because of her interest in these subjects and her organized way of solving problems. With the support of her family and inspired by her father's engineering career, she decided to study industrial engineering at Manipal University, a top private university in India. Nabaruna excelled in her studies while staying connected to her upbringing. During holidays, she went back home to take part in Durga Puja, savor homemade food, and spend time with family, friends. People often described her as calm, generous, and intellectually curious. She loved Rabindra Sangeet and Bengali food, which helped her maintain her identity, even as she prepared to live abroad. Getting accepted into a PhD program at North Carolina State University was a major achievement. Although it meant leaving home, she was excited and thankful for the opportunity. Her parents were anxious but completely supported her goals. They stayed in touch through video calls, sharing news and providing support from afar. Even after moving to the US, Nabaruna kept strong ties to Behala. She visited whenever she could, kept in contact with old friends, and remained involved in family matters. Those who knew her said that despite her success, she never forgot her roots. Nabaruna earned her degree from Manipal University before moving to the United States to study at North Carolina State University in Raleigh. There, she entered the PhD program in industrial engineering, soon became known for her strong analytical skills and organized research methods. Although adapting to a new country was challenging, Nabaruna adjusted well. She managed her research and teaching duties carefully, earning the respect of professors and students alike. Outside of school, she stayed connected to a close group of Indian students. Together, they celebrated Indian festivals and preserved Bengali culture through food, music, and stories from home. After finishing her PhD, she got a job at SAS Institute in Cary, North Carolina. At SAS, a well-known data analytics software company, she had challenging analytical jobs. Her co-workers said she was accurate, concentrated, and reliable. People valued her skills, her ability to work well with others. She did well at work and created a peaceful, consistent personal life. She stayed in touch with her parents and made time for cultural activities when she could. While not very social, she was well regarded and liked by her close colleagues. In December 2019, Nabaruna came back to Kolkata to marry Michael Aaron Matthews, an American. They had a traditional Hindu wedding with family and friends. Pictures show Nabaruna wearing a red sari and smiling with her parents and husband. Her family was happy for her, hoping this marriage would bring her personal fulfillment in addition to her successful career. After their wedding, Nabaruna and Michael made their home in Morrisville, North Carolina, a peaceful suburb of Raleigh. They lived in a house on Seagrave Place, in a neighborhood of similar houses. The area was safe and close to tech companies like SAS, where Nabaruna worked. They also had a dog, Ralphie, who Nabaruna loved very much. Neighbors remember Nabaruna and Michael kept to themselves, didn't socialize much. Nabaruna would sometimes exchange greetings with neighbors while walking. She continued to work full-time in SAS and regularly contacted her family in Kolkata. She shared updates about her home life, photos of meals, short videos of Ralphie, and had brief calls about everyday things with her parents. Friends noticed that Nabaruna became more socially withdrawn after getting married, though she remained dedicated to her job and cultural identity. She attended community events less often, and when she did, she often came alone and left early. She seemed to be growing more emotionally distant. Nabaruna and Michael was saddened by the death of their dog, Ralphie. Those close to Nabaruna said she was deeply affected by the loss. She had a strong emotional bond with Ralphie, and his death seemed to change her. Friends recalled that she became quieter during this time, although she remained dedicated to her work and family. Even though Nabaruna and Michael seemed fine and there were no obvious problems or signs of trouble at home, they were facing some underlying emotional stress. Nabaruna's parents and co-workers thought she was a calm, responsible woman, and no one suspected she was in any immediate danger. On April 14, 2023, Michael called 911 from his home on Seagrave Place in Morrisville and reported that Nabaruna had taken her own life. When police arrived, they found Nabaruna dead in a small office. She had been shot twice, once in the back of the head and once in her left temple. Her arm was resting on an urn believed to contain her dog's ashes. A suicide note was found near her body. The room smelled strongly of gasoline, and the gas can was also present. Bullet casings, a gun, and other items in the room were arranged in a way that initially suggested a mutual end her own life. However, investigators soon found inconsistencies with this theory. The angles of the gunshot wounds, the lack of gunshot residue on Nabaruna's hands, and the careful arrangement of objects raised suspicions. Within hours, police began investigating the case as a homicide. Security camera footage from a Bass Pro shop showed Michael buying a handgun, ammunition, a fuel container, and zip ties on April 13, the day before the incident. The handgun was confirmed as the murder weapon because it matched the bullets found at the crime scene. Michael did not have a registered gun license, and the suicide note raised concerns. Forensic linguistics experts analyzed the note and determined that the vocabulary and sentence structure were inconsistent with Nabaruna's usual writing style. The note was typed and unsigned, whereas she typically wrote notes by hand. Furthermore, digital analysis revealed no indication that she created the file on any of her electronic devices. The medical examiner's autopsy determined the death was a homicide. The bullet wound to the back of the head ruled out and her own life. Toxicology reports showed no banned substance or sedatives in her system, disproving the theory that she was drugged or involved in her own death. Police noted that Michael waited several hours before calling emergency services, potentially to stage the scene. Investigators found a tarp and extra zip ties in the garage, suggesting the murder was planned. Gasoline was present inside the house but unused, likely to mislead first responders into believing a larger plan had failed. After the autopsy results confirmed foul play, Michael was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The news deeply affected the community and Nabaruna's family in Kolkata, India. They were devastated. The case against Michael was built on forensic science, digital evidence, and a reconstructed timeline. After authorities changed the classification of the April 14 incident to a homicide, prosecutors and investigators started gathering evidence to show Michael had planned the crime. Key evidence included security footage from a Bass Pro shop on April 13. This timing matched the period when investigators believed he was planning the crime. The autopsy revealed that Nabaruna was likely killed by a shot to the back of her head. This wound was probably the first and fatal one. Experts determined that she could not have shot herself because of the angle of the bullet and the absence of gunpowder residue at close range. A second shot to her temple, though damaging, also appeared to be from someone else. Both wounds suggest she was murdered at close range. The suicide note, found near Nabaruna's body, was typed and unsigned. Further investigation revealed that the note was created and printed from a device used by Michael, not Nabaruna's computer. The digital evidence went beyond the note. Investigators examined Michael's internet search history and found disturbing searches from the days before April 14th, including how to shoot someone and make it look like end one's own life, gasoline explosion setup, and how long does gun residue stay on hands. These searches strongly indicated that Michael planned the murder and researched ways to make it look like something else. Court documents filed by prosecutors described the scene at Nabaruna's home. Her body's position, an urn containing the ashes of her dead dog placed nearby, and a gas can left by the door suggested a carefully staged scene. Furthermore, an unused tarp and additional zip ties found in the garage implied that Michael had considered other, possibly more elaborate, plans before carrying out the one discovered. The prosecution successfully argued that the death was a planned murder made to look like a end one's own life. Michael's access to weapons and tools made the crime possible, his intentions were obvious, and his attempts to cover it up worsened his legal situation, convincing the court of his guilt. Tupun and Sipra went to the United States. Even though the American culture and legal system were new to them, they wanted to understand what happened and make sure their daughter's story was told correctly. They stayed with friends and supporters for months, going to hearings, talking to lawyers, and following the case closely. Being in the courtroom showed how strong they were. Even though they were grieving, they stayed calm, determined. After Nabaruna's story touched people worldwide, the Indian American community started a GoFundMe campaign to help her family with travel and legal costs. The Karmakars then became champions for their daughter's memory, raising awareness about domestic abuse and gun access. They shared their experience with local news outlets and groups. Although they didn't start their own public campaign, their dignified response to tragedy inspired many. Tupun and Sipra emphasized that seeking justice for Nabaruna was not about revenge, but about uncovering the truth. Clearing their daughter's name was just as crucial to them as ensuring the killer was punished. The investigation revealed details about Nabaruna's life in the months leading up to her death through testimonies from her friends, colleagues, and community members. A close friend and colleague at SAS provided important testimony. She stated that Nabaruna had confided in her about growing verbal arguments at home. While Nabaruna never explicitly spoke of physical abuse, she did express feeling emotionally drained and unsure about her marriage. The doctor added that Nabaruna had started researching legal options and had considered separating from her husband. Nabaruna's co-workers noticed a change in her behavior over time. She used to be friendly and involved, but she became more quiet in meetings and stopped going to social events. Her emails were still professional, but she interacted with people less. One team leader said Nabaruna declined a leadership position because she said she had personal distractions. People in the North Carolina Indian community also saw changes in her. She used to go to Bengali cultural events and community prayers, but she hadn't been seen at any in the months before she died. Some people remembered that she often came alone, left early, and didn't chat or talk about her personal life. Investigators examined Nabaruna's private messages, including texts and drafts of emails. They found no explicit threats or obvious signs of danger. However, some messages indicated she was stressed. While not direct proof of abuse, these messages pointed to a tense home environment. Michael Aaron Matthews was charged with first-degree murder, leading to a legal case against him. Wake County prosecutors were ready for a trial that would present disturbing evidence and a thorough investigation of the manipulated crime scene. Leading up to the trial, the defense and prosecution discussed a plea agreement for Michael. He risked a life sentence if found guilty of first-degree murder. On May 19, 2025, Michael pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. The court accepted the plea under North Carolina's sentencing guidelines. Michael Aaron Matthews was sentenced to 13 years to 16 years in prison, with credit for time served. This agreement prevented a lengthy trial and secured a conviction, avoiding potential appeals or jury issues. The judge confirmed that Michael entered the plea willingly and that it aligned with the investigation's findings. The courtroom was quiet during the hearing. Michael did not apologize or make a statement. Tupun and Sipra, who were present, stated that while the sentence didn't fully compensate for their loss, the guilty plea was a crucial step towards finding closure. Some legal experts believed it was a smart move that protected the victim's family from further pain. Others worried that the lesser charge didn't reflect the premeditation and deceit involved. Nabaruna Karmakar's vibrant life, marked by intellectual brilliance and deep cultural roots, was tragically ended, leaving an irreplaceable void in the hearts of her family and community. Raisa Suelen Ferreira da Silva lived in Curitiba and aspired to work in fashion and beauty. She had moved from Bahia, seeking a new beginning, with the support of a lifelong acquaintance. He aided her relocation, provided professional contacts, and assured her of a promising future. In early June 2025, he informed her of a fantastic job opportunity in another city. Raisa packed, bid farewell to her friends, and departed with him. Immediately after, all attempts to contact her were unsuccessful. From a young age, Raisa was very ambitious and dreamed of working in fashion and music. Growing up in a family with limited financial resources, she knew she would have to create her own opportunities. She began participating in beauty pageants and, around the age of 19, won the regional Miss Sarah Branca contest in 2020. This was her first step into public life. Concurrently, she managed a social media page where she shared humorous and beauty-related content and promoted products. Later, Raisa enrolled in college to study aesthetics and took part-time jobs in retail and hospitality. She met Marcelo Alves when she was around 10 years old. He taught Kung Fu through a community program that Raisa and her cousin joined. Raisa viewed Marcelo as a trusted mentor. Over the years, their families became close, particularly because Marcelo's son, Doni, was the same age as Raisa. Raisa's family trusted Marcelo completely. Doni was also practiced martial arts with her as children. In 2022, Raisa moved to Curitiba at around 20 years old. She had always wanted to work in fashion and digital content creation, believed that her hometown lacked opportunities. Curitiba, with its modern atmosphere, busy environment, and numerous agencies, events, and companies, seemed like the perfect place to pursue her goals. Her move was also motivated by an offer from Marcelo. Marcelo Alves is a stand-up comedian, had been performing in bars and pizzerias and sharing videos online in Curitiba for over 10 years. He offered to help Raisa relocate. He promising support and saying his professional connections could boost her career. Raisa found his offer convincing and decided to move. When she first arrived, she stayed with Marcelo and his son. This was a sensible arrangement since she was new to the city and didn't know anyone. However, she moved out soon after. The reasons for her move are not entirely clear, but sources say that she and Marcelo started experiencing friction. Apparently, Marcelo's interest in Raisa became more than just friendly. Following that, she moved in with some friends and lived there until June 2025. Life in Curitiba wasn't easy. Raisa kept working on her growth as a content creator while searching for opportunities in the beauty and aesthetics industry. At the same time, she attended college to gain professional training in her chosen field. Like many young adults starting out in a big city, she also worked part-time in retail and food service. Despite the challenges, Raisa didn't complain. She had a clear goal: to achieve financial independence and professional recognition. After moving to Curitiba, Raisa distanced herself from Marcelo, no longer considering him a close friend. However, he remained in her social circle, occasionally contacting her and acting like a family friend. This allows him to maintain a certain level of trust with her. Raissa seemed unconcerned, at least outwardly. In Curitiba, she appeared confident and focused on achieving her goals. But one conversation changed everything. On the morning of June 2, 2025, Raissa woke up with a plan. She was set to leave Curitiba and start fresh in the city of Sorocaba, located in the state of São Paulo. She had made this decision after speaking with Marcelo, who told her he had found her an excellent job. According to him, the position in Sorocaba came with great pay, housing, and room for professional growth. Raissa believed this was her big break, a real chance to improve her life. She packed her clothes, personal items, and work tools. She was certain about her decision. She told her friends she was moving permanently, not just taking a trip. The job offer was so good that she could finally stop renting, quit her side jobs, and concentrate solely on her new work. She also mentioned that Marcelo would drive her to Sorocaba, and he did. Since he didn't own a car, he borrowed one. Around 11 a.m., he arrived in the Porto neighborhood. Raissa's friends helped carry her bags down and said goodbye at the entrance to the building. A video from that moment. Marcelo and Raissa pulled away. That was the last visual confirmation of her whereabouts. Just 20 minutes after leaving, Raissa stopped responding to messages. Her phone went offline. Calls didn't go through, and texts were never delivered. At first, her friends thought she might just be out of signal range, traveling through a rural area. But as the hours passed, their concern grew. All day long, no friend or relative could contact her. Disappearing without a word was completely out of character for Raissa. By evening, her friends tried calling Marcelo, but he didn't answer. That's when they contacted Raissa's parents back in Bahia. By that night, the family had filed an official missing person report. Law enforcement began the investigation almost immediately. The first steps focused on confirming key details: her last known location, timeline, who she was with, and the route she was supposed to take. It was verified that on the morning of June 2nd, she left Curitiba with Marcelo. After that, there was no trace of her, no phone calls, no messages, and no signs that she had arrived at her supposed destination. At the time of her disappearance, Raissa had been in good spirits. She hadn't mentioned any doubts or problems. What she told her friends painted a hopeful picture. She was ready to start a new chapter with stability, growth, and a promising career. That optimism, the way she had spoken about the future, made her sudden silence even more alarming. None of her loved ones could have predicted that a move arranged by someone she'd known since childhood would lead to her vanishing. Raissa was a grown, independent woman, not someone prone to impulsive decisions. That's what made her disappearance so difficult to understand. That day ended without answers, leaving everyone in a state of growing uncertainty. Raissa's phone stayed silent. No texts, no signs of movement. And as more time passed, one thing became clearer: what had seemed like a chance at a better life might have been a trap all along. Because Marcelo Alves was the last person known to have seen Raissa, he quickly became the main suspect. He told the police that Raissa had changed her mind about going to Sorocaba and asked him to drop her off in the Ganchinho area, about 9 miles from her home. He said she told him she would order a ride using an app and go somewhere else. Marcelo claimed this was the last time he heard from her. However, his story seemed suspicious. Why would Raissa, who had carefully prepared for her move, suddenly change her mind? Why didn't she contact her friends or family? There were no obvious explanations. The police took Marcelo's statement but continued to investigate. His behavior started to appear odd. Initially, he invited Raissa's family from Bahia to stay with him in Curitiba while they searched for her. While this seemed kind at first, it later felt like he was trying to manipulate the information being shared. In conversations with Raissa's relatives, he acted supportive and worried but avoided answering direct questions. Raissa's sister started organizing search efforts in their hometown. She printed and handed out flyers with Raissa's picture, posted updates on social media, and contacted her network. At that point, no one suspected a tragic outcome. Law enforcement continued interviewing people, paying close attention to Marcelo's son, Doni. Doni told investigators that Marcelo had mentioned his trip to Sorocaba and offered Raisa a ride since he was going that way. However, Doni said things didn't go as planned. He claimed Marcelo told him Raisa initially canceled, then returned to their house, and finally left for good. This account differed from Marcelo's statements to the police. Marcelo's stories were inconsistent, changing from one conversation to the next. In the 8 days following Raisa's disappearance, Marcelo gave at least 3 different versions of events. One version stated Raisa left and took a rideshare. Another said she stayed at his place but later disappeared. In a third version, she wanted to stay with him, but he refused. Doni's timeline was also unclear. These conflicting stories and changing details increased suspicions. The police had no security camera footage, location information, or witnesses. The only thing known for sure was that Raisa got into a car with Marcelo and then disappeared. After that, her phone, bank cards, and social media accounts showed no activity, suggesting she didn't leave on her own. Marcelo started acting strangely. His calm reaction seemed inappropriate given the situation. He also continued to post on social media as if nothing was wrong. Raisa's family was very upset by this. They didn't understand why Marcelo, who had known Raisa for so long, appeared so unconcerned and distant. They felt he should be doing more to help. Also, they were troubled by his constantly changing explanations. This became a major concern as the family demanded clear and logical answers, but he couldn't provide any. As the investigation progressed, Marcelo became the prime suspect. His statements contradicted the available evidence. Suspicion mounted against him, and Raisa's family became convinced he was hiding something, though they didn't yet know the full truth. On June 9, 2025, Marcelo Alves, with his lawyer, went to the police station and declared he was ready to tell the truth. That day, he confessed to committing a serious crime. Before making his official statement, Marcelo sent Raisa's family lawyer a voice message. In it, he claimed he had considered Raisa carefully, denied wanting to harm her, but confessed he may have had feelings for her that went beyond friendship. He also suggested the whole truth would be revealed soon. This message was the first sign that he might be involved. When questioned, Marcelo confessed that the job offer was a complete lie. He said he made it up to trick Raisa into traveling with him. He borrowed a car, picked her up at her house, and took her to his home. There, he told her the truth: he had strong feelings for her, and there was no job in Sorocaba. Marcelo stated that Raisa was shocked and very upset by something he did. He said she got angry, criticized him, and expressed how disappointed she was. He became overwhelmed, lost control, and acted out due to a breakdown. He confessed that, in this state, he strangled her using a plastic cable tie. That, he left her in the room. He returned 10 minutes later and found she was dead. He then decided to conceal his crime. He wrapped her body in plastic and sealed it with duct tape. He called his son, Doni, and told him what he had done. Marcelo said Doni was shocked and told him to go to the police. Doni did not participate in the murder itself. However, he agreed to help his father dispose of Raisa's body. They put it in the car's trunk and drove towards Aracaria, a town near Curitiba. Marcelo said they chose a spot in a wooded area. There, they dug a shallow grave, only 6 to 8 inches deep, and buried Raisa. Marcelo willingly told this story and later agreed to show investigators the burial place. That same day, he guided police to the precise location. When the police dug there, they found Raisa's body, wrapped in plastic, in a shallow grave. The evidence suggested she had been suffocated, confirming his confession. Marcelo described exactly what he did, which allowed investigators to confirm his story with forensic evidence. Marcelo was arrested that day and charged. Although police had his confession, they needed independent evidence to confirm the details of the crime. His son, Doni, was questioned separately. Doni admitted to helping his father after the act but claimed he didn't know what Marcelo planned to do beforehand and wasn't involved in the act itself. He stated he was scared and confused, that he tried to persuade his father to confess, but Marcelo refused. Forensic analysis contradicted Marcelo's statement that he used a plastic cable tie. Experts determined the marks on Rice's neck suggested manual strangulation or suffocation with a soft object like a plastic bag. The discovery of a polyethylene bag near the body strengthened this theory. Investigators began to suspect Marcelo had planned the murder, rather than committing it in a moment of rage, as he claimed. His story of a sudden argument didn't align with the evidence. He had pre-arranged transportation, lured Risa with a fake job offer, convinced her to bring her belongings, drove her to an isolated location, and cut her off from everyone. The steps he took to hide the body, wrapping it, moving it, and burying it, indicated a calculated plan, not a loss of control. Furthermore, Risa showed no phone or online activity after entering Marcelo's car, leading investigators to believe he intentionally isolated her to commit the crime. After the initial investigation, authorities determined the crime was likely femicide, a type of gender-based violence. The main reason for this conclusion was the motive. Risa had refused a romantic relationship with Marcelo. This crime carries a prison sentence of 20 to 40 years. Investigators believe this was a premeditated act, not a spontaneous one. While the court will consider the defense's account, Marcelo's story already appears to contradict the accumulating evidence. Doni also faced legal trouble. Doni confessed to helping cover it up. He admitted to moving the body, driving to the burial location, and assisting in the cover-up. Consequently, Doni was charged with unlawful concealment. He was initially arrested but later released on bail because this charge usually doesn't lead to long prison sentences. After Marcelo Alves's confession was validated and the details of the crime were fully revealed, the case progressed to the next stage. The public and Rice's family, friends, and the countless people who followed the case were deeply affected. The shocking nature of the crime was compounded by the identity of the perpetrator. Risa had known and trusted Marcelo since childhood. The stark contrast between his image as a caring mentor and the person who committed the crime made the situation even more tragic. Risa's case gained significant attention on social media, with her photos, posts, and videos rapidly circulating throughout Brazil. People voiced their outrage over the injustice, the dangers of misplaced trust, and the potential for betrayal from those closest to us. Her story resonated deeply, becoming viewed as a national tragedy because it involved the loss of a young woman in a place where she felt safe, with someone she considered family. Human rights organizations pointed out that these crimes frequently involve perpetrators who have a personal relationship with the victim. Risa's story became a stark illustration of how manipulation, control, and concealed aggression can escalate, leading to devastating outcomes. Advocacy groups used her case to raise awareness, advocate for legal changes, and promote stronger measures to prevent gender-related violence. Marcelo remains in custody awaiting trial. Since his confession, he hasn't made any further statements or public comments about the case. Doni, after being released on bail, has also stayed out of the public eye. Posts about Risa continue to circulate, especially around the anniversary of her disappearance and her birthday. Though the trial has yet to take place, even during the early phase of the investigation, Risa Swellen's case became symbolic. It illustrated how thin the line can be between trust and danger, how easily manipulation can hide behind the mask of friendship. Risa didn't take a reckless risk, she accepted help from someone she had known since childhood, and that tragically became the mistake that cost her everything. In Kimmelwaken, a normal afternoon took a dark turn. A man was found bleeding from a stab wound to the neck. Later, another person was discovered injured on a bus. These were the first in a series of attacks, all marked by sudden, silent violence without robbery or warning. The perpetrator was someone no one suspected. In 1995, Itzel Nayeli Montano Garcia was born in Kimmelwaken, a city in the state of Mexico. This city would later be known for its violent crimes. Itzel's early life was difficult. growing up in a poor neighborhood where survival was a daily challenge and childhood was short-lived. She was the second of 6 children. Her father worked as a car washer, and her mother earned money by selling items on the street. Their home was inadequate, small, run down, and located in a dangerous area. The family faced constant poverty, struggling with hunger, debt, and addiction. Itzel had to grow up too quickly. She took care of her younger siblings, handling adult responsibilities while still a child. She stopped going to school after the 3rd grade. By age 14, her life changed drastically. She started a relationship with an older man and became pregnant. However, she experienced complications during her pregnancy and needed a hysterectomy, which saved her life but meant she could never have children. This loss caused her deep sadness and depression. 2 years later, her partner left her. Alone and heartbroken, she turned to banned substance for comfort, which resulted in her becoming homeless. The streets became her harsh reality, filled with addiction, violence, and hopelessness. She slept under bridges, begged for money, stole when necessary, and became defensive when threatened. Raphael, a minibus driver, noticed Itzel's beauty. He was an aggressive and possessive man who offered her shelter. For a while, it seemed like a good thing. They moved in together, hoping to make a life together, but their relationship was unstable. Their life together quickly became violent, filled with arguments, screaming, physical fights, and injuries. Raphael often belittled Itzel for her lack of education. However, the biggest problem in their relationship was her inability to have children, which constantly reminded them of a past trauma. By 2015, Itzel's life was completely out of control. At only 20 years old, she was addicted to industrial solvents and losing touch with reality. She became aggressive, unpredictable, and prone to violence. In September of that year, during a psychotic episode, she tried to slash her grandmother and Raphael's necks with a pocket knife. No one died, but this incident showed how far gone she was and started a disturbing series of events. The first known assault occurred on September 13. Jose Alberto Pichardo, a 36-year-old tinsmith, was walking through his neighborhood when he was viciously stabbed in the abdomen. The blade pierced his arm and left a gaping wound across his neck. Bleeding and barely conscious, Jose managed to crawl to his home. His sister found him collapsed near the front door and immediately called for help. Thanks to the quick arrival of emergency responders, he survived the attack. From September 13 to 18, 2015, a series of stabbings caused widespread fear in Kimmelwaken. These seemingly random attacks terrorized 5 neighborhoods, leaving victims and a sense of panic in their wake. The motive behind the attacks was unknown, but they all followed the same disturbing pattern. Victims were attacked in broad daylight, at close range, with a knife or razor blade. There was no apparent pattern or warning. The violence came suddenly and unexpectedly. Later that same day, just a few hours later, Antonio Soto Leyva, 43, was ambushed on his way to work. A single, devastating 15 centimeters wound slashed across his neck. Acting on sheer instinct, Antonio fought back, landing a blow that momentarily stunned his attacker. Though wounded, he attempted to chase the assailant, making it only 150 feet before blood loss overcame him. Paramedics who treated him described his survival as miraculous. The blade had somehow missed all major arteries. Antonio, like others who would later testify, was certain of one thing: the attacker was a woman. Her small frame and calm demeanor had made her seem unthreatening until she struck from behind with calculated force. The description was eerily similar to what other survivors would later report. The next day, on September 15th, the violence escalated. During a bus ride, Rosario Laureano Ventura, 40, was silently stabbed. No one noticed the attack in real time. Only when the driver completed his route did he find Rosario lying motionless in the rear of the vehicle. She had been bleeding out for minutes, and by the time she was rushed to a hospital, it was too late. Rosario became the first confirmed fatality of the attacks. That night, another assault unfolded under the cover of darkness. Rosa Maria Jimenez Martinez was walking down a quiet street when she was struck. At first, she believed a man had attacked her, but as her assailant fled, she realized it was a woman. Thankfully, her injuries were not life-threatening, and she made a full recovery. Then came September 16th. Around 11:30 p.m., Yolanda Velkrin Magadan, 45, was stabbed multiple times. The wounds were brutal, especially a deep gash on her right side that tore through layers of skin and muscle. Yolanda's life was saved only after 2 emergency blood transfusions. Her account of the attack, like the others, described the same profile: a woman swift and trained in knife combat. The following day, another young life was stolen. Brenda Chantal Mondragon Martinez, a 16-year-old student, was walking to school with her mother when the attacker struck in full view of witnesses. Brenda was stabbed in the neck. No one could stop it in time. Brenda died before she could reach the hospital. Her death marked the second fatality in what was now being labeled a local crisis. On September 18th, the final confirmed victim was Luisa Soto, 40. Though gravely wounded, she survived. Her experience echoed the accounts of those before her: an unexpected ambush, a woman with a knife, and an attack that came without warning. By then, the entire municipality of Kaimalwakan had plunged into chaos. Rumors spread like wildfire: a female assailant, armed and unrelenting, was stalking the streets. Survivors described her knife skills as disturbingly precise, her movements sharp and fast, as though trained in martial arts or even military techniques. The press gave her a name: the Slasher of Kaimalwakan. She didn't care about gender. She didn't rob. She didn't speak. She just attacked. Residents began believing a serial killer was on the loose. The community's fear turned into action. Neighbors armed themselves, some with sticks and knives, others with bats and even firearms. They formed neighborhood patrols, taking shifts throughout the night to guard their homes. Kaimalwakan became a city on edge where everyone looked twice at strangers and whispered nervously about the woman who vanished into the night after each assault. The local police, facing increasing pressure from the frightened community, started working closely with witnesses and survivors. Slowly, a description of the suspect began to develop. Initially, investigators thought the attacker might be a man dressed as a woman, based on the strength, precision, and planned nature of the attacks. However, this idea was quickly rejected as more accounts were gathered. The emerging description was of a young woman, probably between 20 and 25 years old, with light brown skin, long dark hair, and a thin frame. Witnesses remembered her being well-dressed. She didn't appear dangerous. 2 specific physical details were particularly memorable: Santa Muerte tattoos on her body, a disturbing symbol that only made the mystery more intense. Investigators were most disturbed by the attacker's method. She always attacked from behind, typically in public places, using a folding knife to target the neck. Her calm behavior made victims feel safe until it was too late. The attacks weren't related to arguments, robbery, or kidnapping attempts. There seemed to be no motive, only violence and terror. Most attacks happened early in the morning in neighboring areas. Police increased patrols in those areas to try and catch her before another attack. However, media coverage worsened the fear. Sensational news, guesswork, and growing rumors made people even more paranoid. Families stayed home, and businesses suffered as fewer people went out. The local economy, once lively, declined because of widespread anxiety. The attacks abruptly stopped after September 18th. While relief washed over the community, unease remained. People wondered if the attacker was gone for good or simply hiding. The police continued their investigation, and the community remained anxious for weeks. On October 2, 2015, the authorities announced the arrest of Itzel Nayeli Montano Garcia, a young woman from Kaimalwakan. This news shocked the community, as many residents knew her. Days before, the police had circulated her photo as a person of interest on social media. However, the Attorney General's office then issued a statement denying Itzel's involvement. They claimed the photo was related to an unrelated domestic violence case and warned against spreading misinformation. This contradiction caused even greater confusion until October 9th, when authorities reversed their statement and officially named Itzel as the prime suspect. Investigators say she fits the description provided by witnesses and lived near all the crime scenes. They also discovered that she may have committed her first violent act on September 13th, when she reportedly assaulted her partner during a domestic dispute. Police believe her second attack was on Elto, a local leader of street vendors. Both men identified her as their attacker and as the person responsible for the series of assaults that have been plaguing the city. Eitzel's family described a troubling pattern. When she used banned substance, especially solvents, her personality changed drastically. She became unpredictable, aggressive, and frightening. Investigators believed she committed the attacks while high on these substances, explaining the crime's erratic nature. Based on this evidence, prosecutors issued an arrest warrant. When police searched her home, they found a purple jacket and pink sneakers that victims had described. Several survivors identified her as the attacker. However, the critical piece of evidence was a mistake Eitzel made during her last attack. She dropped a folding knife, which police found. Forensic analysis confirmed her fingerprints were on the knife. Following the violent events of September in Camagüey, the Mexican State Attorney General's office formally accused Eitzel of involvement in 4 criminal cases. The charges, including assault, attempted murder, and murder, stem from incidents alleged to have taken place between September 13th and 18th, 2015, during a period of intense violence that gripped the community. However, when questioned, Eitzel gave a contrasting explanation. While she admitted to stabbing her partner and attempting to harm a street vendor in the subway, she claimed these actions were acts of self-defense. She also acknowledged her banned substance addiction and memory loss caused by prolonged inhalant abuse, but insisted she had no connection to the other assaults that terrorized the city. Regardless of her statements, the judge ordered her immediate transfer to a state prison to await the results of her trial. People who knew Eitzel were shocked by the news. They remembered the quiet, 20-year-old candy vendor on public transport, not a violent attacker. Some neighbors recalled arguments between Eitzel and her partner, Rafael, but many believed Rafael was the abuser. Rumors spread about whether Eitzel was truly the attacker or a scapegoat to calm the public. Her lawyers shared this concern, stating the accusations relied on unreliable, possibly forced, testimonies. He claimed Eitzel acted in self-defense against both her abusive partner and an attacker on the subway. He argued her arrest seemed like a stunt rather than a fair legal process. He claimed the police raided her home without a warrant, using weapons and intimidation, which terrorized her and her family. He further stated that some witnesses were intimidated or forced to give false testimony against her. Rafael's involvement in the case was also called into question. He testified during the first trial in 2016 that he never wanted to press charges against Eitzel and that his original statements were coerced. He alleged the police beat him and tricked him into making a formal deposition. These inconsistencies weakened the prosecution's case. In August 2016, after a long and disputed trial, the court acquitted Eitzel of attempted homicide against her former partner. The court ruled that the evidence was insufficient for a conviction. However, her legal troubles continued. She still faced 4 other charges, including aggravated assault, attempted murder, and qualified homicide. Her lawyer insisted he had testimony and evidence to disprove each charge. Despite this, the legal process continued, fueled by intense public pressure. In July 2017, after a second trial, Eitzel, then 22, was found guilty of attempted murder with aggravating circumstances against Jorge, a street vendor leader. She received a 20-year prison sentence. Initially, she faced 6 accusations, but 3 were dismissed. The remaining 2 accusations were still being processed in the legal system as of July 2025, when this investigation ended, but there have been no further public updates on them. Although the authorities believed Eitzel was the main suspect in a series of knife attacks, questions remained. Disturbingly, 2 more stabbings occurred after she was arrested. Both involved female attackers using the same methods, surprise attacks from behind with a sharp weapon and no clear motive. This meant the characteristics previously used to identify Eitzel could also describe another person who was still at large. Now 30, Eitzel is still in state prison. Her life, once filled with turmoil, is now eerily quiet within the prison walls. She has no visitors and rarely talks, even to other inmates. Guards say she is isolated, often mumbling nonsense at night and sometimes laughing alone, as if sharing secrets with someone invisible. Some believe she is haunted, not only by her possible crimes, but also by her knowledge. Itzel's story is disturbing and sad. She was born into a life of poverty, addiction, and violence and is now accused of crimes many think she didn't do. Was she a violent criminal, someone lost in life, or just an easy target to reassure a frightened community? Some questions remain. What if the real attacker is still out there? What if Itzel was just a victim of public fear, punished for her personal struggles, addictions, and poverty, rather than her actions? Tammy Engstrom, a 22-year-old mother of a 1-year-old baby, was happily married and deeply devoted to her family. Despite her responsibilities, she also enjoyed spending time with her loved ones. On February 7, 1991, around 5:30 p.m., Tammy dropped her son Casey off at the home of her friend, Sharon King. Sharon had agreed to babysit while Tammy got ready for work. Tammy also planned to meet her uncle after her shift. She worked at the Clover Bar in Hubbard, a small town near a state border with a population of about 7,000. Tammy's mother, Mary Jane Hayes, also worked at the same bar. Tammy arrived at the bar at 6:30 p.m. and worked for about 3 hours. By 9:30 p.m., she had begun feeling unwell and told her mother, Mary, that she wanted to end her shift early. Mary agreed to cover for her. However, instead of going home, Tammy decided to visit another bar, the Nikilo Lounge, a 10-minute drive away in Musbury, Guyana. She had promised to meet her uncle, Daniel Hivner, and didn't want to disappoint him. Daniel was a regular at the Nikilo Lounge, which was a favorite spot for their family. Tammy arrived at the Nikilo Lounge by 10 p.m. and joined Daniel. They drank and talked together. Around 11 p.m., one of Daniel's acquaintances, Kenneth Byros, joined them. Although Kenneth knew Daniel, they weren't close, and this was his first time meeting Tammy. As the group continued drinking, Tammy became severely intoxicated. Witnesses later reported that she could barely stand and even fell off her chair at one point, requiring help from the men. By midnight, they decided to stop giving her alcohol. The group stayed at the bar until it closed at 1 a.m. Although Tammy had sobered up slightly by then, she decided she wanted to drive home. Concerned about her condition, Daniel took her car keys and insisted she shouldn't drive. Since Daniel himself was too drunk to drive, Kenneth offered to take Tammy home, as he appeared to be the most sober among them. Before leaving, they stopped for coffee to help Tammy wake up. After drinking coffee, Tammy fell asleep in Kenneth's car. He reassured Daniel that he would take her home, and he drove off while Daniel left with another friend. Meanwhile, Tammy's husband, Andy, had returned home from work and was waiting for her. They had been married since December 9, 1988, and had been together for years before tying the knot. Around 11:30 p.m., Andy began worrying about her whereabouts. He decided to go out and search for her, stopping first at the Clover Bar where she worked. Bringing along a small gift to mark the anniversary of the day they first met, Andy expected to find her there and take her home. To his surprise, Tammy wasn't at the bar. Her mother, Mary, told him that Tammy had left hours earlier after complaining of not feeling well. Concerned but not overly alarmed, Andy assumed she might have gone to pick up their son, Casey, from Sharon's house. He drove to Sharon's home, hoping to find her there. At Sharon's, he learned that Tammy hadn't arrived. Sharon mentioned that Tammy had planned to meet her uncle Daniel at the Nikilo Lounge and had said that she wouldn't pick up Casey until after 1 a.m. This news worried both Andy and Sharon. Andy called the Nikilo Lounge, and a staff member there informed him that Tammy and her group had recently left the bar. Relieved, Andy assumed he had simply missed her on the road. He picked up Casey from Sharon and headed back home. When Andy arrived home with Casey, he was surprised to see that Tammy still hadn't returned. Feeling exhausted, he assumed she might have stayed overnight at Daniel's house and decided to go to bed. However, when Andy woke up the next morning, he immediately checked her side of the bed. She still wasn't there. Concern turned to fear as he searched the house and realized she hadn't come home. While it wasn't unusual for Tammy to spend time with her uncle Daniel or her friends, staying out all night without informing anyone was unlike her. Even more troubling, she hadn't returned to pick up their son, something she would never fail to do as a loving and devoted mother. Andy began calling friends and acquaintances, but no one had any idea where Tammy might be. By midday, Andy and a friend went to Nick Ilo Lounge, hoping to gather information about the previous night. In the bar's parking lot, Andy found Tammy's car. He then contacted Daniel, who recounted the events of the night before and handed over her car keys. Andy was upset to learn that his wife, Tammy, had been driven home by Kenneth, a man he barely knew, but he held his emotions in check while trying to uncover what had happened. He retrieved the car and later tracked down Kenneth's address to confront him, hoping Tammy had simply been too drunk to return home and had stayed at Kenneth's place. When Andy met Kenneth, Kenneth claimed that Tammy had indeed been heavily intoxicated the night before. He said he tried to sober her up with coffee, but it didn't work. Kenneth explained that he had decided to drive her home, but Tammy fell asleep in his car before providing her address. As they neared a railroad crossing, Kenneth said he gently shook her to wake her, but she suddenly panicked, screamed, and jumped out of the car. Kenneth claimed she ran off, and despite his efforts to follow her, he couldn't catch up. According to Kenneth, this happened less than a kilometer from Nick Ilo Lounge. Frustrated and exhausted from searching, Andy became deeply concerned and decided to report Tammy as missing to the police. He did not believe Kenneth's testimony, was angry with Kenneth, and suspected the man of lying. After leaving the police station, Andy called Kenneth again and warned him that if Tammy wasn't found soon, the police would focus their investigation on him. Kenneth continued to insist that Tammy had run off on her own and that he had no idea where she was. Initially, the police hesitated to act, suggesting Andy should wait at least a day in case Tammy returned on her own. They speculated that she might simply be sleeping off the night at a friend's house. However, after the waiting period had passed, the authorities started actively searching for Tammy. Since Kenneth was the last known person to see Tammy, detectives focused closely on him. They also interviewed other witnesses. Investigators noticed that Kenneth repeatedly told several people the same story about Tammy jumping out of his car on Friday, February 8th. Witnesses found his account unconvincing, leading detectives to suspect he was trying to avoid responsibility and craft an alibi. Kenneth's story wasn't the only red flag, his injuries raised suspicions as well. Andy immediately noticed that Kenneth had fresh scratches on his face and a deep cut on his hand. As detectives compared witness statements, they noticed Kenneth kept modifying his story, seeming to distance himself more and more from Tammy's disappearance. His explanations for the injuries also lacked consistency. He told Andy that he had been drunk and accidentally cut his hand while breaking a window to enter his home, but he later claimed the scratches on his face came from chopping wood at night. The idea of chopping wood in the dark while intoxicated seemed highly improbable to investigators. Frustrated by Kenneth's changing stories, Tammy's family began confronting him. Tammy's brother even threatened Kenneth, saying he would punish him if anything happened to Tammy because of him. Tammy's mother, uncle, and husband also joined in pressuring Kenneth. Observing the rising tensions, law enforcement decided to delve deeper into Kenneth's background. Kenneth Byrose was born on June 24, 1958, and had a challenging childhood. His father was a cruel and controlling man who treated his family like possessions. Both his mother and siblings endured life under this oppressive environment. Despite his mother being faithful, his father was extremely jealous and focused entirely on controlling her, neglecting his parental responsibilities. He often abused her physically and alternated between threatening to harm her and his family. The family's situation only improved after his father passed away from liver disease in October 1983, which finally freed them from his tyranny. Kenneth was described by his family as kind and compassionate. He earned a degree in criminology during college and aspired to succeed in life. However, even as a young man, he had several run-ins with the law. In 1977, he was linked to a high-profile case, but it was dismissed due to a lack of evidence. Later, in 1986, he was caught driving under the influence, pleaded guilty, and received a minor penalty. Despite the significant trauma caused by his father's behavior and death, he appeared outwardly sociable and normal. At the time of Tammy's disappearance, he was living with his mother. On the morning of February 8, 1991, the day after Tammy went missing, Kenneth's mother noticed a gold ring on the bathroom floor. Unfamiliar with it, she questioned Kenneth, as he didn't have a girlfriend at the time. Kenneth simply took the ring, claiming he didn't know where it came from. Initially, his mother didn't think much of it. However, as rumors began spreading in the community about Kenneth's possible involvement in Tammy's disappearance, she began to reconsider the ring's significance. Kenneth later suggested that the ring might belong to Tammy and claimed he would return it to the bar they had visited the previous day. However, it was later revealed that he never followed through. On Saturday morning, February 9, 1991, Tammy's friends and family began searching for her, focusing on areas Kenneth mentioned. This included a wooded area near some railroad tracks, where she had reportedly run from Kenneth's car. Initially, the search yielded no results. It is worth noting that Kenneth was also involved in this search, with extensive support and organization from law enforcement. During police interviews, Kenneth appeared nervous when questioned about Tammy's disappearance. A police officer and his partner decided to closely monitor Kenneth. They floated several scenarios, including one in which Kenneth made an unwanted advance toward Tammy, causing her to panic and jump out of the moving car. Although Kenneth initially denied this version of events, he later admitted that it had happened that way. This sudden change in his story raised suspicions among investigators. Detectives decided to question Kenneth further. One officer managed to have a one-on-one conversation and succeeded in extracting more information. Kenneth confessed that while driving Tammy home, he placed his hand on her leg. Tammy reacted by pushing his hand away, becoming frightened. According to Kenneth, she opened the car door and jumped out while the car was moving over the railroad tracks. He claimed that she hit her head when she fell, but initially said she ran away afterward. As the detectives pressed him for details, he provided more information and even pinpointed the exact location of the incident, less than a kilometer from his home. The detectives grew increasingly suspicious of Kenneth, so they took him to the police station for further questioning. During questioning, Kenneth began referring to Tammy in the past tense, which led investigators to suspect that she was no longer alive. This raised immediate alarms for the detectives. When Kenneth realized the police believed Tammy was dead and suspected him of involvement, he requested a lawyer. However, he didn't stop speaking completely. Kenneth eventually agreed to guide detectives to locations that he claimed were relevant. He also referred to multiple places during these conversations, suggesting that there might be more than one site of importance. However, the detectives found this strange but did not rush to expand the investigation further from his statement. Early on Sunday, February 10, 1991, the grim reality of Kenneth's words became evident. Police from Pennsylvania and Ohio discovered the dismembered body parts of a young woman in an isolated, wooded area of Butler County, Pennsylvania. The remains were horrifying. Her head and the right side of her torso were found first, along with her right leg, amputated above the knee. Her body was unclothed except for black stockings, which had been pushed down to her ankles. The medical examiner confirmed that her death was brutal. Near the location Kenneth had identified as the place where Tammy jumped out of the car, investigators found a blood-streaked stretch of railroad tracks. Several of Tammy's internal organs and pieces of her clothing were also discovered. This prompted the investigators to search Kenneth's home, where they found a bloody knife hidden in his bathroom, another blood-stained knife in his personal room, and blood-soaked clothing matching descriptions provided by Tammy's uncle, Daniel. The bloody clothing belonged to both Kenneth and Tammy. Further evidence was uncovered in the attic, where investigators found a ring that was confirmed to belong to Tammy, the same one Kenneth's mother had previously found in the bathroom. In Kenneth's vehicle, more remains were discovered, including a piece of Tammy's liver in the car trunk. The medical examiner determined that Tammy had been strangled, as her hyoid bone was fractured, and she had been stabbed 5 times. After her death, her body sustained 91 additional injuries, confirming that her death was deliberate and not accidental. Confronted with this overwhelming evidence, Kenneth confessed to the murder. However, his story shifted repeatedly. As the trial approached, Kenneth's lawyer sought to reduce his responsibility. He argued that Kenneth's abusive father had negatively impacted his mental health. Kenneth faced charges of abuse, first-degree murder with aggravating circumstances, and first-degree robbery. His defense included an insanity plea supported by a psychiatric evaluation, which diagnosed him with schizoid personality disorder, neurotic depression, and alcohol addiction. The defense cited these factors, along with Kenneth's lack of serious prior convictions, as mitigating circumstances. Throughout his life, Kenneth had been described as a hard-working, modest man, not someone capable of such atrocities. However, this narrative failed to convince anyone. Psychiatrists working with law enforcement found Kenneth sane, fit to stand trial, and fully aware of his actions. The defense then shifted its strategy, claiming that Tammy's death was accidental and that Kenneth had panicked and tried to cover it up. The prosecution countered, pointing to his changing stories as evidence of deceit. They claimed that Tammy's death was a deliberate and premeditated act of murder, intended to cover up evidence of abuse. The defense presented Kenneth's latest version of events. He claimed that Tammy had been heavily intoxicated and unable to give her home address, so he had taken her to his residence to let her sleep it off. At a railroad crossing, Kenneth said he tried to wake her, but she panicked, started screaming, and fell out of the car, hitting her head. According to Kenneth, the head injury made her agitated, and when he tried to help, she became violent, screaming, throwing stones, and scratching him. Fearing legal trouble, Kenneth claimed he panicked, subdued her, and later attempted to dispose of the evidence. Kenneth claimed that he pulled out a knife to intimidate Tammy and stop her from screaming. Instead of calming down, she allegedly resisted even more. During the struggle, Kenneth stated that he accidentally cut his hand and lost control of his emotions. He admitted to hitting Tammy, knocking her to the ground, and covering her mouth with his hand to silence her. According to him, he pressed his hand over her mouth for several minutes and only realized she had died when he calmed down and removed his hand. Panicked, he decided to dispose of her body. However, forensic evidence contradicted Kenneth's account. Experts determined that Tammy's broken hyoid bone was not caused by covering her mouth but by deliberate force applied to her throat. Furthermore, Kenneth's explanation failed to account for the 91 injuries found on Tammy's body, many of which were inflicted after her death. The evidence led prosecutors to accuse Kenneth of committing an intentional and exceptionally cruel murder. They described him as a sadistic individual who tortured Tammy and continued to harm her body even after her death. After the murder, Kenneth reportedly brought Tammy's body home, intending to bury it. However, due to the frozen winter ground, he struggled to dig a grave. To make it easier to transport, he divided her body into several parts. During this process, Tammy's ring fell in the bathroom, where it was later discovered by Kenneth's mother. He confessed to dragging Tammy's remains into a nearby forest, where he attempted to bury the parts in shallow pits. When the pits were too small for the larger body parts, he hid the bodies in separate pits overnight. When Tammy's family began to pressure and threaten Kenneth, he exhumed her body and moved it to a location several kilometers away in Pennsylvania for better concealment. Throughout the investigation and trial, Kenneth's account kept changing. Prosecutors, supported by Tammy's relatives, argued that Tammy had been tortured, abused, and murdered in a premeditated and extremely cruel manner. The jury sided with the prosecution, convicting Kenneth Byrose and sentencing him to death. While awaiting his sentence, Kenneth's inconsistent stories and denials failed to sway public opinion or the jury's decision. While in prison, Kenneth faced multiple disciplinary actions. In May 1992, he was caught with a cardboard tube that could be used as a makeshift gun and 3 darts made from toilet paper and metal staples, resulting in 10 days of disciplinary confinement. A month later, authorities discovered a knife crafted from a piece of an antenna in his possession. In October 1995, a search of his cell uncovered 12 packs of contraband cigarettes and other prohibited items. Despite these infractions, Kenneth and his lawyers pursued appeals in an effort to avoid his execution. On July 9, 2005, at the age of 45, Tammy's widower, Andy Engstrom, died from a heart attack. Those close to him said he never recovered from the loss of his wife. During this time, Kenneth remained in prison, working as a food delivery worker on death row and participating in church services and community programs. Many believed he became more religious and reformed during this period. On October 22, 2009, a trial took place. In an interview with journalists, Kenneth continued to insist that Tammy's death was an accident. He maintained his innocence and argued that he did not deserve the death penalty. Kenneth expressed hope that his sentence might be reduced to life imprisonment without parole, sparing his life. However, those who loved Tammy, especially her mother, Mary Jane, and her son, Casey, strongly disagreed. They firmly believed that Kenneth's crime could only be justly punished with the death penalty. Efforts to secure a retrial failed, and on December 8, 2009, at around noon, 51-year-old Kenneth Burrows was executed. His final meal the night before consisted of cheese pizza, onion rings, fried mushrooms, chips with French onion dip, cherry pie, blueberry ice cream, and Dr. Pepper. On the day of his execution, he drank only a glass of water, expressed regret for the murder, and thanked those who had prayed for him. Execution, carried out at the South Ohio Correctional Facility in Lucasville, was the first in the state to use a single powerful anesthetic drug, which replaced the previous 3-drug protocol. Although Kenneth's lawyer objected to what he called an experimental procedure, the execution was declared a success, as it was carried out smoothly and Kenneth died within 10 minutes. Tammy Engstrom's mother, Mary Jane, attended the execution despite her advanced age and poor health. Using a wheelchair and an oxygen tank, she arrived at the event in severe pain but later told reporters that she felt a sense of relief and justice. Just 12 days afterward, Mary Jane passed away. Over time, local rumors began to spread about the house where Kenneth had lived with his mother. People claimed it was haunted by ghosts. Eventually, the house caught fire and was completely destroyed, yet the stories persisted. Some locals insisted that restless spirits lingered at the site where the house once stood. Over the years, this tragic tale became part of local urban legends. Sharabin Kay was born on April 30, 1999, in a small village in Iraq, into a traditional and simple family. When she was 6 years old, her family relocated to Germany and settled in Ingolstadt, where she eventually began school. Her parents, deeply religious and conservative, tried their best to instill traditional values in her. However, she grew up in a different environment and quickly adapted to the culture and lifestyle of her new home. From a young age, Sharabin demonstrated a strong, independent personality and was not afraid to challenge authority or go against traditional expectations. She aspired to live freely, embracing a modern, progressive way of life. While still in school, she dreamed of pursuing a career in the beauty industry as a stylist and beauty influencer. She spent hours watching makeup tutorials online and used her allowance to purchase cosmetics, convinced she would someday own a beauty studio or even launch her own cosmetics brand. However, Sharabin's determination often came with emotional outbursts, manipulative behavior, and attempts to gain sympathy in order to achieve her goals. By the age of 15, she began a secret relationship with Juan, a 17-year-old boy of Iraqi descent who also grew up in Germany. Aware that their families would not approve, they kept their relationship hidden, meeting discreetly around town. Their secret was revealed when Sharabin's cousin saw them together. Instead of informing her parents, the cousin attempted to blackmail her with inappropriate demands. Sharabin refused and ultimately decided to tell her parents the truth about both her relationship and the blackmail attempt. Though shocked, her parents could no longer be manipulated by the cousin, and Sharaban took control of the situation. Despite her parents' disapproval and orders to end the relationship, she continued to see Ruan in secret. Family tensions escalated, but Sharaban held her ground. When she turned 18, she and Ruan got married, making their relationship official. Following the marriage, she cut off contact with her parents for over a year. Both Sharaban and Ruan were ambitious and worked hard to build a better future. Together, they opened a small hair salon where Sharaban worked as a makeup artist and skincare specialist. Their business prospered, providing a stable income and bringing them closer to their dreams. At first, their future seemed promising. Yet the happiness in their marriage was short-lived. Sharaban's jealous, hot-tempered and emotionally volatile personality quickly ruined their relationship. Private arguments turned into public confrontations, and her behavior began to negatively impact their marriage. Her jealousy was extreme, making her suspicious of nearly every woman who interacted with Ruan. Her emotions often boiled over, leading to conflicts even with clients at their salon, which began to harm their business. The tension between them escalated, and their marriage became fraught with constant conflict. One day, at a cafe where they often ate lunch, Sharaban lost her temper during an argument with Ruan, throwing objects in frustration. One of the objects, a dessert, landed on a nearby table of other patrons. The incident resulted in them being banned from the cafe and quickly became a topic of discussion in the community. Despite mounting criticism and damage to their reputation, Sharaban's behavior only worsened. Their arguments eventually turned physical, with Ruan often bearing the brunt of Sharaban's aggression but choosing not to retaliate. Despite the relentless turmoil, neither of them brought up the idea of divorce. Remarkably, it seemed as though both had accepted the toxic cycle their marriage had become. In 2020, Sharaban and Ruan were confined to close quarters due to unforeseen circumstances, which strangely led to a temporary reconciliation. They managed to rebuild some semblance of connection, and by the following year, they approached their shared business with renewed enthusiasm. Things seemed to be improving. By 2021, Sharaban rewarded herself with a sleek black Mercedes-Benz. Having her own car gave Sharaban a new sense of independence. She no longer had to justify her comings and goings to anyone. Her confidence grew, bordering on defiance. She began going out frequently, visiting nightclubs, and socializing with new people, especially men. These encounters were usually short-lived, casual flings or brief dating experiences. However, one of them evolved into something deeper when Sharaban met a man named Jacob. What began as a casual relationship quickly turned into a passionate love affair. Despite openly pursuing Jacob, Sharaban continued to monitor Ruan's behavior, checking his phone, accusing him of cheating, and even following him. Her bond with Jacob grew deeper, and for a time, she seriously contemplated leaving Ruan for him. Then, Sharaban discovered she was pregnant. Certain about who the father was, she immediately told Ruan about the pregnancy and announced she was leaving him for her new partner, Jacob. The news devastated Ruan. He understood their marriage was beyond repair, but the humiliation took a heavy toll on him. Meanwhile, Sharaban's life took an unexpected turn when Jacob revealed that he wasn't ready for fatherhood and was not interested in marriage. Emotionally overwhelmed, Sharaban found herself isolated. At this point, Ruan's family intervened. Sensing an opportunity, they pressured Sharaban to terminate the pregnancy. Reluctantly, she complied, but the experience deepened her resentment, not only toward Ruan but also toward his family, whom she held responsible for forcing her decision. Even though their relationship was clearly broken, neither Sharaban nor Ruan made their separation official. They continued living under the same roof in a tense and toxic environment. Eventually, things escalated. One day, overcome with rage, Sharaban stormed into Ruan's brother's house and attacked both him and his wife with a stun device, terrifying their children. This marked a serious turning point. After several more violent incidents, Ruan decided to take legal action. He filed for divorce and secured a court order banning Sharaban from approaching him or his family. However, there was still the matter of the business they had built together, a salon legally registered in Ruan's name. Determined not to lose the salon, Ruan took control of it, effectively cutting Sharaban off from the venture. The court would ultimately determine its future. Most of Ruan's family and friends supported him, leaving Sharaban isolated and embittered. She moved into a rented apartment, withdrew socially, and began plotting revenge. She devised a chilling plan to fake her own death and frame Muan for the crime. If successful, he would go to prison, allowing her to disappear and start over. The plan required finding someone who resembled her, a young woman who could pass as her double. She approached her scheme with disturbing determination. She turned to social media, meticulously analyzing profiles, studying photos, and shortlisting potential victims. Eventually, she found someone who matched her criteria, a 23-year-old waitress named Khadija. Through social media, Sharaban discovered that Khadija had grown up in foster care, meaning she had no close family who might quickly raise concerns. Like Sharaban, Khadija was originally from Pakistan. She had moved to Germany as a child with her father, who was later imprisoned, leaving her to grow up in a group home. Despite the challenges of growing up alone in a foreign country, Khadija remained hopeful and outgoing. She dreamed of pursuing a career in the entertainment industry, whether on television or in film. She regularly attended auditions, casting calls, and talent competitions. To Sharaban, this determination presented the perfect opportunity to execute her plan. After carefully analyzing every detail, Sharaban concluded that Khadija was the ideal target. They had similar physical features, comparable height, build, facial structure, and even a strikingly similar sense of fashion. They looked so alike that they could easily have been mistaken for sisters. In April 2022, Sharaban created a fake account on a popular social media platform, pretending to be a talent scout. She meticulously crafted the profile to appear authentic, gaining followers and frequently posting about casting calls and auditions. By mid-June, she contacted Khadija under the guise of working as a casting director for a well-known German rap artist. She messaged Khadija, claiming that Khadija had been selected for a music video audition. Khadija was ecstatic and immediately agreed, convinced it might be her big break. A fan of the artist, she decided to message him directly to share her excitement and inquire about further details. To her surprise, she discovered that no such project existed and that there had been no casting call. Realizing she had been deceived, but unsure of the perpetrator's identity or motives, Khadija blocked the fake account. This left Sharaban scrambling to devise a new, foolproof plan. Over the following 2 months, Sharaban developed another fake identity. This time, she posed as the owner of a new beauty salon and reached out to Khadija with an offer of free beauty treatments as part of a promotional campaign for the salon's grand opening. In exchange, Sharaban only requested permission to take photos and videos of the process. Seeing nothing suspicious about the offer, Khadija happily accepted. There was, however, a slight inconvenience for Khadija. The salon was located across town, making transportation difficult. Sharaban offered to personally pick her up and drop her off afterward. Leaving no stone unturned, Sharaban kept a close eye on Khadija's social media and even copied her hairstyle. Sharaban subtly changed her hair color to match Khadija's perfectly. By the time the meeting day arrived, their appearances were nearly indistinguishable. Sharaban took additional precautions to ensure her plan's success. About a month before the meeting, she moved back in with her parents, pretending to reconcile and seek forgiveness. Her parents, believing her intentions were genuine, welcomed her back. In Sharaban's twisted plot, her parents were meant to discover a body and mistakenly identify it as hers. The meeting with Khadija was scheduled for the evening of August 16, 2022. Sharaban asked Khadija to wear a dark blue dress similar to one she had previously worn in a social media photo. Sharaban had already purchased an identical dress for herself and deliberately wore it repeatedly in front of her parents earlier that day, ensuring they would clearly remember what she had on before leaving. She informed her family she was going to meet Juan to resolve private business matters and mentioned feeling anxious about how the conversation might go. Before leaving, she promised to return that evening and asked them to wish her luck. At 5 p.m., Sharaban drove off in her black Mercedes. When her mother later tried calling her, the phone went straight to voicemail. Initially, her family wasn't overly concerned, but as time passed without any word from her, their worry grew. By nightfall, they could no longer sit idle. They decided to search for her and headed toward Rowan's neighborhood. Along the way, they came across Sharaban's abandoned black Mercedes on the roadside. It was unmistakably hers, and they knew she would never leave her car unattended like that. They immediately knew something was gravely wrong. The car's tinted windows made it hard to see inside in the dark, but through the windshield, they could make out a figure lying still in the back seat. They tried to open the doors but found them locked. In a panic, they called the police and emergency medical services. When officers arrived and unlocked the vehicle, they made a horrifying discovery: the lifeless body of a young woman lying in the back seat in a pool of blood. A subsequent forensic examination revealed over 50 stab wounds concentrated on her face, neck, and chest. The attack was clearly a deliberate and extremely cruel act, intended to ensure that the victim would not survive. Although the victim's face was so disfigured it was unrecognizable, Sharaban's parents identified the body as their daughter. She was wearing the same dark blue dress she had left home in, her purse containing her ID was nearby, and her bracelet was still on her wrist. News of the gruesome crime spread quickly, especially since the car had been found near the area where Sharaban once lived with her ex-husband, Juan. Naturally, he became the prime suspect. Sharaban's parents informed the police that she had left to meet Juan for a business-related discussion but had never returned. Now her car had been found with a body inside. Police acted quickly to question Juan, but by the time they arrived at his home, he had disappeared. Aware of the situation and how it could incriminate him, he fled, which only fueled suspicions further. His relationship with Sharaban had ended badly, with a bitter business dispute, and there was no love left between them. He had both motive and reason to flee. However, the case remained suspicious. Although the victim was identified by her parents and found in Sharaban's car, dressed and carrying identification, her face was severely disfigured in what appeared to be a deliberate act. This appeared to be intended to prevent a positive identification. Then, a surprising twist emerged. The day after the body was discovered, a woman named Samira filed a missing person report for her friend and coworker, Khadija. Khadija hadn't shown up to work, wasn't answering her phone, and hadn't been seen since the evening before. During their investigation, authorities noticed that Khadija bore a striking resemblance to Sharaban. DNA analysis confirmed their suspicions. The body in the car was not Sharaban but Khadija. This discovery completely changed the direction of the case. Adding to the revelation, evidence emerged that someone had recently attempted to hire an attacker online, offering €30,000 for the job. This lead pointed directly to Sharaban and her new boyfriend, Shakir. Initially, they had sought to hire someone to carry out their plan but eventually decided to execute it themselves. Their scheme revolved around staging a brutal murder in order to frame Juan and send him to prison. However, their actions soon revealed how poorly they had thought through their plan. Sharaban and Shakir's reckless behavior astonished investigators. Despite faking her own death, Sharaban made no effort to hide. She and Shakir continued living their lives as if nothing had happened, staying in the same city where they were well known. This decision proved disastrous. Sharaban was arrested just 2 days after the crime when she casually walked into a cafe. Several customers immediately recognized her and alerted the police. When officers arrived and detained her, she quickly disclosed Shakir's location, attempting to shift all the blame onto him. Sharaban and Shakir, who had initially plotted the crime together, quickly turned on each other. Investigators noted glaring flaws in their plan, particularly regarding what they intended to do after the framing succeeded. If Sharaban had been declared dead and Juan imprisoned, what was her next move? Was she planning to continue living in the same town where people could easily recognize her? How would she obtain new identification? With the case gaining national media attention, it would have been nearly impossible for her to disappear anywhere within Germany or elsewhere in Europe. Their financial situation was no better. The only money they had was a small amount Sharaban withdrew from her bank account before carrying out the crime. They left the car with Khadija's body inside, believing it would make their plan more convincing. However, they failed to anticipate a key problem. Once Sharaban was legally declared dead, she would lose all legal claims to the business she shared with Ruan. Furthermore, investigators had access to tools like DNA testing, dental records, and fingerprints to confirm the identity of a victim, making their deception easy to uncover. Once taken into custody, the relationship between Sharaban and Shakir quickly unraveled. The love that had once bonded the two was gone. Now, it was every person for themselves. Shakir claimed that Sharaban had masterminded everything, planning every detail and carrying it out on her own. He maintained that his sole role was helping her disappear afterward. However, Sharaban's account painted a very different picture. According to her, it was Shakir who had decided to go through with the act, while she had backed out at the last minute. Right on schedule, a sleek black Mercedes-Benz pulled up in front of the building where Khadija lived. Sharaban introduced herself as the salon owner, while Shakir played the part of her personal driver. Khadija felt uneasy, even startled, by how much she and Sharaban looked alike. They weren't just similar, they looked like twins and were dressed almost identically. Sensing her discomfort, Sharaban quickly brushed it off, claiming it was part of a branding strategy for an upcoming salon promotion. Once the three of them were in the car, Sharaban acted as though they were running late and insisted on taking a shortcut. Shakir drove them off the main road into a deserted, undeveloped area. There, he suddenly claimed they had a flat tire and needed to get out of the car so he could fix it. The moment Khadija stepped out, he attacked her, using a knife to strike repeatedly in the chest, face, and neck. He didn't stop until her face was unrecognizable. After the attack, Shakir placed the body in the back seat, changed into a clean set of clothes he had brought along, and got back into the driver's seat. Thanks to the car's tinted windows, it was nearly impossible for anyone to see inside, so they weren't worried about being noticed. They drove to an area near Ruan's home, parked the car casually along the roadside, and walked away, unconcerned about being seen or recognized. They checked into a hotel in another part of the city and carried on as if nothing had happened, frequenting public places and maintaining their usual routine. The trial that followed would shock the country. After the crime came to light, Juan went into hiding. He remained off the radar for over a year as the investigation unfolded. Eventually, he explained that even after authorities cleared him of suspicion, he feared Sharaban, despite being behind bars, would find a way to retaliate against him. As it turns out, he had good reason to be afraid. While in custody, both Sharaban and Shakir allegedly attempted to arrange further attacks by hiring others through prison contacts, hoping to silence potential witnesses. Thankfully, none of those attempts succeeded. During the trial, Sharaban and Shakir turned on each other. Each claimed the other was the mastermind, and neither showed any remorse for what had happened. One witness, a man named Alan, testified that he had initially responded to an online ad offering payment for an attack. After receiving a €5,000 advance, he simply took the money and disappeared. It was reportedly after this scam that Sharaban and Shakir decided to carry out the crime themselves. Fearing the police might track him down and implicate him, Alan voluntarily went to the authorities and confessed everything. Throughout the case, investigators were baffled by the complete lack of logic behind the plan. It was clear that Sharaban's primary motive was revenge against Juan, but no one could understand what she thought would happen afterward. After staging such a violent crime and faking her own death, she made no effort to hide. She stayed in the same city, carried on with her usual life, and had no long-term plan for survival or escape. She hadn't even considered how she would support herself financially moving forward. Sharaban's defense attorneys leaned heavily on the flaws in her plan, arguing that her intentions were confused, her motivation weak, and that she would never have followed through without Shakir's influence. They claimed it was he who had taken matters into his own hands, lured by the prospect of financial gain. But the court didn't buy it. In December 2024, both Sharaban and Shakir were found guilty of a brutal, premeditated crime committed in coordination with one another. They were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Beverly Carter was born in 1963 in Anniston, Alabama. By the age of 16, she was already working as a waitress, brimming with ambition and eager to create a better future for herself. During this time, she met Carl Carter, who was 3 years older than her. Their relationship blossomed quickly, and they soon married. However, their early years as newlyweds were turbulent. One alarming incident occurred when Carl, driving under the influence with Beverly as a passenger, became violent after she asked him to pull over due to his reckless driving. Despite the dangerous situation, she chose to stay with him. Not long after, she discovered Carl had been unfaithful. Though deeply hurt by the betrayal, she decided to give him another chance, believing in forgiveness. Over time, their relationship began to mend. They eventually moved to Scott, Arkansas, a quiet rural town that allowed them to put down roots. They went on to have 3 sons, and Beverly wholeheartedly embraced motherhood, pouring her energy into creating a warm, stable home for her family. As her children grew older and more independent, Beverly felt the need to pursue her own ambitions. She began working as a receptionist, a role that served as a stepping stone, before discovering her passion for real estate. She enthusiastically studied for her license, and once certified, found her calling as a real estate agent. Beverly excelled in her career, earning a reputation for her warmth, honesty, and tireless work ethic. Her clients adored her, and her job not only brought her fulfillment but also provided financial security for her family. They were not wealthy, but the weight of financial struggles eased significantly. By their 20th wedding anniversary, Carl and Beverly decided to celebrate in a meaningful way. They renewed their vows and hosted the celebration they had once dreamed of but couldn't afford as newlyweds. It was a joyous milestone and a testament to their perseverance as a couple. But their journey was not all happy moments. In 2003, the family faced an unimaginable tragedy when their 19-year-old son, Christopher, died in a car accident. Christopher was married with children, and his sudden death left a void in their lives that could not be filled. Beverly was deeply saddened, but to cope, she poured herself into her work. She also found comfort in her grandchildren, whose presence helped heal her heart. Despite her grief, she remained a loving mother and grandmother, and it was her strength that helped the family overcome this loss. On September 25, 2014, Beverly's day began on a positive note. She won a friendly office contest with a $5,000 prize and was in high spirits. That evening, she had one last appointment scheduled, showing a house in Scott to prospective buyers. The clients claimed they were ready to pay in cash, promising a smooth transaction. Energized and optimistic, Beverly left her office at 5:30 p.m., calling Carl on her way to let him know about the appointment. She shared the address and promised to bring dinner home afterward. Everything seemed normal until hours later. By 9 p.m., Beverly still hadn't returned home. Carl grew increasingly anxious as his calls to her went unanswered. One of their sons decided to check her office for any sign of her, while Carl drove to the property in Scott, the last place she was known to be. When Carl arrived, he was met with a disturbing sight. Beverly's car was still in the driveway, and her purse was openly sitting on the passenger seat. This immediately alarmed him. Like many real estate agents, Beverly followed strict safety protocols and never brought personal belongings into unfamiliar homes. With growing concern, Carl approached the house. The front door was wide open. As he stepped inside, the house was eerily silent. He called out her name, but there was no response. She was nowhere to be found. Carl quickly phoned his son, only to learn that there was no sign of her at the office either. The office was locked up for the night and empty. At that moment, Carl knew it was time to contact the police. When officers arrived, they meticulously examined the scene. However, there was a complication. Carl had entered the house before their arrival, leaving his fingerprints and potentially disturbing evidence in what now appeared to be a crime scene. During questioning, Carl was transparent. He openly discussed his past, including mistakes he had made early in their marriage, his infidelity, and a single incident of physical aggression. However, he emphasized that those events were far behind him. Carl spoke with raw emotion about his love for Beverly and his commitment to their life together. His candidness and visible distress led investigators to believe he was not the suspect they were looking for. At approximately 1 a.m., Carl received a strange text from Beverly's phone. The message said she went out drinking with friends, but that didn't seem right. The tone and wording were completely uncharacteristic of Beverly, and most importantly, she never drank. Carl wasn't the only one receiving peculiar messages. Earlier, as part of the search, Carl had reached out to two of Beverly's colleagues for help. Both women also texted Beverly and received responses that felt off. One colleague, suspicious that something was wrong, sent a coded message, a silent distress signal the team used in emergencies. She simply asked if Beverly had left a red folder on her desk, essentially inquiring whether she was in danger. However, there was no reply. By morning, Beverly Carter's disappearance had become widely known. Police began canvassing the neighborhood near the house where she had vanished. A neighbor reported seeing a suspicious man the previous evening, a tall, thin white man with short, dark hair. He was seen exiting a black car parked not in the driveway, but directly on the vacant home's front lawn. Investigators examined the area and found fresh tire marks on the grass, supporting the neighbor's account. It was their first real lead. Attention then turned to Beverly's work computer. A colleague, familiar with her login credentials, assisted officers in accessing her records. They quickly uncovered details of her last appointment, a meeting with prospective buyers named Steve and Crystal Adams. Their contact information, including a phone number and email, had been logged. However, further investigation revealed these names were fictitious. The email address was fake, and the phone number was tied to an anonymous communications service rather than a personal line. By contacting the service provider, police traced the messages to a man named Aaron Lewis, a 33 years old living in Jacksonville, just 15 miles away. They opted for surveillance rather than immediate action, wanting to confirm whether Aaron matched the neighbor's description, and more importantly, whether he could lead them to Beverly's whereabouts. The surveillance paid off quickly. A tall, lean man with short, dark hair exited the house and got into a black Ford Fusion, fitting the neighbor's description exactly. Undercover officers in an unmarked car began tailing him. Sensing he was being followed, Aaron attempted to escape, speeding away in an effort to lose them. The chase was short-lived. Driving recklessly, he lost control of the car and crashed into a ditch. The collision was severe. Not wearing a seatbelt, Aaron hit his head on the steering wheel and sustained facial injuries. He was extracted from the wreck and taken to the hospital for medical treatment. Initially, authorities had no formal reason to arrest Aaron Lewis. Without a warrant, their actions were limited to surveillance, observing him discreetly, gathering evidence, and avoiding direct engagement. However, everything changed after his failed escape and subsequent hospitalization. Following treatment for his facial injuries and in magnetic resonance imaging, Aaron made a bold move. While momentarily unsupervised at the hospital, he slipped away unnoticed and vanished before law enforcement could intervene. Just like that, Aaron, the prime suspect in Beverly's case, has escaped. A massive manhunt was launched shortly thereafter. Local television stations aired images of him from the scene of the crash, helping residents of the Little Rock and Scott areas quickly identify him. It didn't take long for him to be identified. Two office workers discussing the case noticed a man at a bus stop who strongly resembled the fugitive. One of them approached him under the guise of asking about bus schedules to get a closer look at his face. There was no doubt, it was Aaron Lewis. While one worker discreetly called the police, Aaron wandered away, unaware that he'd been recognized. Driven by hunger, he stopped at a Subway sandwich shop, but his low profile didn't last long. Several customers immediately recognized him. Unlike the office workers, these bystanders did not stay quiet. They pointed at him, shouted, and created a commotion. Realizing he'd been found, Aaron fled, sprinting out of the shop and ducking into a nearby building to hide. It was too late. Within minutes, police closed in on the area and arrested him without resistance. After his arrest, Aaron began to offer a defense. He denied any involvement in Beverly's disappearance and initially claimed he hadn't gone to her house alone. According to him, a friend had accompanied him, and at some point, he had stepped outside, leaving Beverly and his friend alone inside. He insisted that whatever happened to her must have occurred after he left. Investigators quickly debunked this story. The supposed accomplice was a soldier stationed far away at the time of Beverly's disappearance, and his alibi was airtight. Witness testimonies and phone records confirmed he hadn't left his post. Having been caught in a lie, Aaron refused to provide the truth. Detectives shifted their approach, pressing him for details about Beverly's location, as they still hoped she might be alive. Aaron remained vague, even cryptic. He hinted that she could survive if found quickly, but warned that she hadn't had food or water since his arrest, suggesting time was running out. Under mounting pressure, Aaron offered to guide investigators to 2 locations where he claimed Beverly had been kept. Both buildings were thoroughly searched, but she wasn't there. Aaron changed his story yet again, insisting that someone else, an accomplice, must have moved her. Because his testimony was unreliable, investigators turned to his call history for answers. The phone records traced his movements on the day Beverly disappeared, leading them to an abandoned concrete plant about 25 miles from Scott where Aaron had previously worked. It was a desolate and grim place. Officers began their search with heavy hearts, fearing the worst. On September 30th, their fears were confirmed. In a shallow grave covered with loose dirt, Beverly's body was discovered. The grave had been poorly concealed, one of her elbows was still visible above the soil. The burial had been hasty, and the scene was haunting. Forensic analysts uncovered duct tape wrapped layer upon layer over her head. She had died from suffocation, she had been wrapped so tightly, she couldn't breathe. When police confronted Aaron with the discovery of Beverly's body, he changed his story again. This time, he claimed he and Beverly had been having an affair after meeting through Craigslist. He alleged they had arranged a private meeting on the day of her death, but a tragic accident had occurred during intimacy. This version was even less believable than the others. Beverly's family and friends knew her as a professional, a devoted wife, and a woman of integrity. There was no evidence to suggest an affair. Moreover, the circumstances surrounding her death, the duct tape mask and the shallow grave, pointed to a far more sinister truth than Aaron's claims of an accidental death. Aaron kept changing his story, shifting the blame each time. Eventually, he claimed he wasn't responsible at all, pointing the finger at his wife, Crystal Lowry. He alleged that Crystal had met with Beverly, and something had gone wrong. While detectives were skeptical, they decided to investigate Crystal more closely. Crystal's phone records raised several red flags. On the day Beverly disappeared, Aaron had an unusually high number of contacts with Crystal. While this alone didn't confirm her involvement, it raised suspicions. About a month after Beverly's disappearance, police arrested Crystal. Once in custody, she broke down and confessed everything. Crystal, then 42, revealed disturbing details about her troubled marriage. Though she and Aaron were still legally married, their relationship had completely fallen apart. They shared a home only because they couldn't afford to separate. Mounting financial stress created unbearable tension, and both were desperate for a way out, but they needed money to make it happen. That's when Aaron devised a horrifying plan: kidnap someone wealthy and demand a ransom. Crystal was hesitant but didn't refuse outright. Aaron suggested targeting a female real estate agent, as they tend to work independently, dress well, drive expensive cars, and appear wealthy. After searching online, they selected Beverly Carter, one of the most successful agents in the area. To Aaron, Beverly seemed like the perfect target. Pretending to be a buyer relocating from out of state with his wife, he called her under a fake name. He told her they were looking for a quiet home near Little Rock. To make it even easier to execute his plan, he picked a listing in a secluded area. At first, Beverly refused the request to take Aaron to see the house, citing her company's policy prohibiting private house viewings with men in remote locations. However, Aaron wouldn't give up. He brought Crystal into the scheme, and Crystal called Beverly, assuring her she would attend the showing as well. Reassured, Beverly agreed to meet with them. To further convince her, Aaron claimed they were ready to pay in cash. When the day came, only Aaron showed up. He apologized and explained that his wife, Crystal, had been delayed. Maintaining her professionalism, Beverly allowed the showing to proceed. Tragically, this would be the last house she ever entered. The two toured the property together, beginning on the ground floor. But as they moved upstairs, Aaron made his move. In an instant, he attacked Beverly. Already weakened from recent surgeries, including a tummy tuck, she struggled to fight back. Overpowering her, Aaron bound her hands with duct tape. Despite her resistance, he forced her into the trunk of his car. His plan was to demand a $100,000 ransom in exchange for her life. He intended to hide her at an abandoned building he once worked at, located 25 miles outside Scott. However, when Aaron arrived, he realized the building was neither abandoned nor suitable for holding someone captive. He had no backup plan. With a terrified woman locked in his trunk and nowhere to take her, he panicked. Desperate, he reached out to the only person who knew about the plan, Crystal. He snapped a photo of Beverly, bound and frightened in the trunk, and sent it to Crystal with a single word: help. Crystal was infuriated. She hadn't agreed to Aaron bringing Beverly into their home. By the time she returned from work, however, it was too late. Beverly was already there, locked in their bathroom. In a state of panic, she and Aaron scrambled to figure out their next move. Aaron had already recorded a message on his phone that Crystal was supposed to send to Beverly's husband, Carl. The message was crafted to make it sound like Beverly was being coerced, begging Carl not to call the police and to comply with the kidnapper's ransom demands. But the message was never sent. It remained on Aaron's phone, another critical piece of evidence. The original plan was for Carl to transfer the ransom money to Beverly's bank account. Crystal and Aaron would then withdraw the funds using her debit cards. Aaron even claimed to have obtained her PIN numbers. However, there was a flaw in his plan. Beverly's debit cards were still in her purse, which he had left behind in her car during the abduction. Realizing his mistake, Aaron returned to the scene to retrieve the cards, hoping no one would notice. But by then, police were already searching the area. In an eerie twist of fate, an officer stopped Aaron as he drove by, mistaking him for a neighbor. The officer casually asked if he'd seen anything unusual. Playing it cool, Aaron gave nothing away and calmly drove off. Back at home, things spiraled even further out of control. Crystal anticipated a new danger. Beverly had seen Aaron's face, and while locked in their bathroom, she had noticed prescription pill bottles with Crystal's name clearly visible. If Beverly survived, she could identify them both. Letting her go was no longer an option. Unwilling to handle the situation herself, Crystal told Aaron that Beverly needed to be dealt with. On a dark, fateful drive, Aaron took Beverly from their home to a cement plant. With chilling resolve, he wrapped duct tape around her head repeatedly until she suffocated. After her death, he buried her in a shallow grave. Crystal Lowry eventually confessed, avoiding a lengthy trial. She pled guilty and was sentenced to 30 years in prison for her involvement. Aaron, however, refused to admit guilt. When his trial began in 2016, Crystal testified against him, but he continued to deny everything. He insisted he had no role in Beverly's murder and only helped cover it up, claiming that Crystal acted alone. The case took a bizarre turn when Aaron alleged that the recording of Beverly's voice was computer-generated, though he couldn't identify any software used to create it. He further argued that the duct tape mask was intended to protect her face from insects during burial. The jury saw through his lies, and after just 4 days of testimony, they found him guilty. Aaron Lewis was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. The story didn't end there. In 2020, Crystal requested early release, claiming she had embraced religion in prison and no longer posed a threat. She expressed a desire to repay her debt to society through volunteer work as a free woman. However, the court denied her request. Crystal remains in prison, serving her full 30-year sentence for her role in the calculated murder of Beverly Carter. Beverly, a devoted mother and wife who worked hard and loved deeply, had only wanted to make it home that night. Instead, her life was stolen by 2 people who saw her as nothing more than a source of money, leaving her family shattered forever.